All right, hello YouTube. It's saying there we go. Saying we're live. Welcome to number 18 for Wizard and Glass Book Club. We're here in the last days of September. September is coming to a close.
Yeah.
A big day today. Let's go ahead and hit the intro and get started.
The Dark Tower by Stephen King. The man in black fled across the desert, and the gunslinger followed. Go then. There are other worlds than these. Death, but not for you, gunslinger. It's time we had our own palaver, I think, and it's going to take a while.
And yet, dauntless, the slug horn to my lips I set, and blew. Child Roland, to the Dark Tower, came.
We are content, one from many. Let the palaver begin.
Hello and welcome to Dark Tower Palaver. This is our podcast covering Stephen King's magnum opus, the Dark Tower series, as well as the extended Dark Tower universe, of course, or the extended King universe, which is, of course, all part of the Tower. Of course, we won't get into any of that in this episode because it's a book club, so we're being hyper-focused on Wizard and Glass right now. We are on number 18 of our book club series, and my name is Tad.
I'm Peter.
And let's, so we're all obviously one off from a big one, 19.
Yeah.
But it is a big day. It is Stephen King's birthday today.
It is.
So the creator of it all, it is his, I'm trying to, let me Google his age. I actually don't know how old he is right now. 77.
77. Is he really 77?
Yep.
Jeez.
Yep, 1947.
Ooh.
So, yeah. So happy birthday to King. We would certainly not be here podcasting if not for, we may have, in an alternate universe, had found our way into podcasting something else.
Yeah.
But I'm certainly glad that we ended up here talking Dark Tower and Stephen King. So happy birthday to King.
Yeah.
Totally serendipity that we ended up recording on this day. Certainly wasn't planned. It just so happened that he has a Saturday birthday. So
Yeah.
and happens to be on our on week, which I guess theoretically should always be on our on week, right? Because all our on and off weeks are pretty much the same because we got to avoid the holidays.
Right.
So so long as his birthday was on a Saturday, we would always be recording on his birthday. So
Yeah.
that's kind of cool. So happy birthday to Cy King.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and dive on in to the introduction. First of all, if you want to, you don't have to worry about spoilers for this episode. We have a spoiler section at the very, very end, but you'll be warned both audibly and visually. So if you have not finished the 7 primary books of the Dark Tower series, this is a safe episode for you until we get to that spoiler section. We stay where we're at or before, we don't jump ahead. So so long as you are not somehow further behind than we are, and at the rate we're going, I don't know how you're further behind than we are, unless you just started reading like in January or something. But even then,
or this month.
Yeah, that's probably more realistic. Like, maybe Labor Day you started reading these, and now you're finally, you're not caught up to us. Like, then it's excusable, but we're really, really slow at this. So
That's right.
That's definitely what we want to do, though, is definitely take these kind of line by line and kind of uncover what gems we have. It seems like we always do that. So first of all, if you want to find the podcast, you can find us on Apple Podcasting, Spotify, Amazon Music, Audible, or any podcasting service of your choice. If you could subscribe, rate, and review us on any of those, we definitely appreciate that. If you want to join us live, you can do that over here at youtube.com/darktowerpalaver. You can also find the live streams in the like past live streams as well. If you want to watch old ones, you could definitely do that. But all of our live ones we do here every other week. And then if you want to like, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications. If we ever move episodes around, I always change up the dates on YouTube, so it'll let you know.
Yeah.
But then you can come and be part of the live discussion. Then if you want to find the show notes, you can do that at darktowerpalaver.com. There's not going to be no show notes for this episode, but that is the hub for all things Dark Tower Palaver. If you want to find things like the questions for new listeners, if you want to send an introductory email about yourself, we have those questions. They're a good way we found over the years to introduce yourself. Because if you are listening, you are now part of the extended quartet, and we welcome you. So, and then if you want to support the show, you can do that at patreon.com/darktowerpalaver. With that, we do monthly hangouts that are exclusive to Patreon, as well as we have our Discord server where you can come on in and chat with us all the time. So that's a lot of fun. Then if you want to contact us, Peter can let you know the ways to do that.
Best way to reach us is through email at show@darktowerpalaver.com. And then check out our social media. We got our Twitter. It's @DarkTowerPod. That's @DarkTowerPod. And then we got a Blue Sky account. It's @darktowerpalaver.bsky.social. And then our Facebook is facebook.com/darktowerpalaver. Our Instagram is darktowerpalaver, all one word, no spaces. And go to tpublic.com/user/darktowerpalaver. Get yourself a hashtag Tad is Terrible sticker, shirt, the official logo of the Dark Tower Palaver podcast.
No, the real base logo. You could also find that as well.
What are you talking about? What base logo?
If you don't like slander,
this isn't slander. This is our real logo. I don't see you wearing anything to contradict me.
No, I'm supporting Quartet 19 and their wonderful stuff. I love their Wizard and Glass shirt that I've got. Got the lookout on there.
About time you finally accept that this is the real logo for this podcast.
No, I don't think so.
I'm gonna get this made into a magnet and put it on the back of your car without you knowing about it.
Oh, if you want to start down that path, sir, only pain will you find.
That's the thing with Tad is he escalates very quickly when it comes to pranks and stuff like that.
Yes, indeed. So in the chat, Bill says, "How exciting to be here! I'm Stephen King Journey, and I'm just wrapped up The Wastelands. Your book club's a very important part of that. I'll be starting Wizard and Glass probably at the end of October. Looking forward to getting caught up with your episodes on this book." That's awesome. Welcome. That's cool to hear, definitely. I mean, I do know that people listen to these episodes, but I don't think we ever get as much feedback on these as we do the round tables and stuff. So that's definitely good to hear. I don't know. I certainly... As the geek that I am, I really wish that podcast 1 existed when I was reading through the series for the first time. But if they did, it would have been really cool to have something to like. I mean, I obviously didn't go out and look for like the old forums and stuff, which I probably could have done. But definitely a connected Dark Tower journey is much funner than doing it on your own.
You kind of like those podcasts that go along with the shows, like Game of Thrones really was not the first one, but one of the big ones that did it.
Yeah,
where it's like the episode airs on Sunday, and every Monday there's a podcast released talking about it.
Yeah, in-depth ones. I mean, I've listened to podcasts for like Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul. I did like True Detective Season 1. There were some podcasts on that. Usually it's shows that have like conversation behind them, and I always love that kind of stuff. It's kind of the shared, community type
kind of like
thing.
the same reason why we started this podcast is that we found that there really wasn't a ton. There were Stephen King podcasts, but there wasn't Dark Tower podcasts.
Yeah, certainly there's a lot more now than there ever was.
Yeah.
So that's definitely cool. And one of my favorite things is for people that have emailed us over the years saying that they had no Dark Tower friends or no one to talk to. Yeah. And this podcast is an outlet. That's probably one of my crowning achievements from my side of the podcast. I don't know how you feel, but that's definitely one of my favorites for sure.
I always love when someone's like, "I didn't have anyone to talk to. Now I have you guys."
Yeah, that's definitely music to our ears.
Absolutely.
So we are currently in book 4, of course, Wizard and Glass. We're in part 2, titled Susan. We are currently in chapter 9, and we are actually going to finish chapter 9 as well as finish part 2 in this episode. Yeah. So that's pretty cool. And the percentages happened to work out just right. And I was like, oh my God, as I was like cycling through figuring out like how much we needed to cover. And I was like, dude, are we going to make it, or are we going to have to like leave like one subchapter? Because sometimes that happens.
It does.
We have an amount of time we have per episode. So yeah, I was worried, but it ended up being pretty much perfect. So, that's pretty cool. So yeah, part 2 Susan, and we are in chapter 9, which is maybe we're not finishing part 2. I do know we're finishing chapter 9. Let's see yes, it is finishing part 2 as well. Okay, I thought so. I started to doubt myself. So chapter 9 is bird and bear and hare and fish, and we are currently on subchapter 6. Let's see. And the Barack says most of my reader friends had heard of it, but nobody had read it. That's a big thing too. There's a lot of Stephen King fans that have not read the Dark Tower series.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm pretty plugged into the King like Reddits and stuff, and it's crazy how often people are like, I'm a Stephen King reader. I've read and they'll like list of stuff, and it's just how crazy how often people have not touched the Dark Tower series.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and dive on in. So first of all, to recap where we left off, there was a incident at Mayer's house.
A dress got destroyed.
Well, I mean, I was
That led to Susan going there, and then there was the incident.
and some pretty terrible things, as well as a big blow up with Cordelia, as Susan tried to convey it and didn't really get the warm shoulder that she probably would have wanted. I don't know if she expected. I feel like at this point Susan would be kind of a dumb person to expect anything from Cordelia.
Exactly.
So we certainly know what we can and can't expect from that fucking horrible woman. But that leaves us where we're at here, going on, starting at subchapter 6. I just wanted to let you know that because a big part of this section, this entire episode, is going to kind of come down to like how Cordelia views things, and we got to make sure it's fresh in our mind where we left off is Susan leaving in a pretty big fit.
Very upset.
Yeah, near hysterical. So
Brocky says in the chat, most of my reader friends have heard of it, but nobody has read it, talking about the Dark Tower.
Yeah. Jumping into subchapter 6 then. So Susan rode with no conscious aim of a location, but some part of her must have had a location in mind, because 40 minutes after leaving her house, she ended up in the grove of willows that she had daydreamed about when Thorin had crept up on her like a bad elf from a Gammer's story. I don't know, is that like a grandma maybe?
Grandpa, grandma,
Gammers, that's
old timer kind of thing.
Yeah, that's what I assume it is. I guess it could be grandpa. Gam things. It sounds like gammy, which is like grandma. Usually. So I guess that which would go into like old wives' tales. Well, that's more of like myths, but like this sounds like a fairy tale almost,
yeah,
right?
Kind of thing.
A bad elf.
Yeah.
So it was cool in the willow, and Susan tied Felicia, and then in parentheses, who she had ridden out bareback to the branch and walked to a clearing at the center of the willows. I would pause and say, I don't know how you tie up a bareback horse. Like, does it still have the?
Yeah. So bareback just means it doesn't have a saddle but it has the bit, because that's what has the reins. Yeah. So she's riding it with the reins, but no saddle.
Yeah. So it's just one of those things. You wouldn't leave the reins on a horse that's you take all the tack and saddle off, you would take the reins off too. So she threw
the bit, the reins in, because you have to be able to control the horse.
Certainly, yeah.
She threw that on and then rode out instead of taking the time to saddle her, which takes a lot longer.
Yeah. I don't know anything about horses.
I know that little bit.
Except don't get behind them.
Yeah.
And startle them, because that will be dangerous.
It's bad for your health.
Of course, she had come here. This is where she had brought all of her griefs and joys since she had discovered it at the age of 8 or 9. She had come here time and again in the endless days after her father had died, when it seemed like her world had ended with Pat Delgado. This clearing is the only place that heard her true grief. She had spoken to the stream, and the stream carried it away. She put her head on her knees and began to sob again, loudly, with unladylike sounds like the caw of squabbling crows. That's a fun little image there.
Yeah,
I love crows. I woke up yesterday and went outside for a quick second. I hadn't even got like the sleep out of my eyes, and heard like a very, very close cawing of a number of crows. And that was a comforting thing to know.
To wake up to a murder that early?
Yeah, to know that crows are very, very... This wasn't like a down the neighborhood away. It was probably in a tree like within probably 20 feet
They
of
were
my
probably
house,
They were probably making noise because they saw you. They went, evil, evil, evil.
Oh, they're wonderful birds, aren't they? She thought that she would give anything to have her father for a single minute to ask if she had to go along with this. So that's a tough one. So my notes here, not sure I have made this connection until doing this, but she has a lot in common with Jake in terms of not having a caring parent or guardian, as well as just the overall tragedy.
Yeah.
I mean, Jake had his parents absent, but he had them. She's lost hers, but then has the absent parent still. It just feels like there's some parallels with Susan and Jake, and it just kind of like, I don't know why I've never really made that connection until doing this. And it's like, and honestly, that probably helps Jake follow this story a bit, that he probably sees himself in Susan a little bit.
Absolutely,
with some of their issues. And I can't necessarily, we don't know Roland's story, we don't know how like involved his parents are. I would assume they're a little bit more involved. I feel like royalty tends to have like a certain like interest in their children.
It's kind of interesting. They have an interest in their children, but a lot of it is not done by the parents. A lot of it feels like it's done by teachers and tutors and those kinds of things. Like, you go and receive instructions and then you come back home kind of thing.
We know Eddie doesn't have a dad in the picture. It sounded like his mom was overprotective. And so I don't know. It's just kind of an interesting, I mean, Susanna probably has the most healthy,
the most nuclear family.
the most healthy family model. But yeah, it's definitely Jake and Susan. I've just never made that connection. But while doing this, I was like, that's a lot of tragedy in her life with no one really to go to. Like, sounds a lot like Jake to me.
It does, and it's kind of a tradition with King. That's my note here. Is kids he writes is not all. It's not 100% with King, but there's quite a few kids that don't exactly have that mom and pop that are supportive and everything like that.
Yeah,
they're either gone, dead, or pieces of shit.
Yeah. And I know King didn't have a dad in the picture, if I remember right. He left pretty early, but I do know his mom was as supportive as possible. So just so people don't try to sometimes people see like an artist portray things a certain way.
He must have had that,
and they assume that whatever. So I remember for the longest time people thought that was that way with Spielberg. And then that new movie Fablesman that came out the last couple of years, it was kind of semi-biographical, and it was interesting because I think he learned some stuff in the more recent years about his family. And some cheating that was happening with his parents, and suddenly he it allowed him to see his whole childhood in a different way.
Yeah.
But it's you see a lot of not missing father figures in Spielberg, and I think King, you have a lot of parental issues throughout. I mean, whether it be a parent missing or a parent like Carrie's mom that's fucking lunatic.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
and I was just the example I always go back to is how many of the kids have.
Richie's probably the only one I can think of off the top of my head that has.
Mike Hanlon has a really good set of parents.
That's true.
But aside,
I don't remember Richie's mom, but I remember his dad, where he gives him the money for the movies. And
his
stuff.
Mom's there cooking him breakfast, and can we have less swearing at the table, please?
That's right.
Not instantly Richie, you foul mouthed little piece of not abusive or anything like that. But can we just little light, playful? Mike and Richie have both parents. Bev obviously does not have a good dad. His dad passed away.
Yeah.
And then Bill's, I don't know how you would
I think
judge
that's
Bill's.
the worst set of parents, to be honest.
No.
Completely dead and void, where it's they're basically fucking mannequins, dude. That's he's essentially living on he's living on his own essentially with no love or kindness, but also on top of it, he's trying to deal with the death of a brother too. So it's he's got some of the most heinous trauma, and his parents are just head in the clouds, we don't fucking. It's almost like they don't have another kid.
You're not wrong about that, but compared to what Eddie goes through with his mother, no. Eddie is abused for 18 years of his life. Bill suffers that for a year or two until they move out of Derry, and then things become normal again. I think what he says in the book.
I think. I know this is a huge tangent, but I would say I think Bill's is the worst parents, because I couldn't imagine a kid because that's a non-nurturing environment at a certain point, where it's just
it's terrible.
I couldn't imagine a kid trying to process my parents don't care about me. It's I saw a comedian that he's this is the joke that made my therapist cry.
Yeah,
and he's my brother died of an overdose and my mom killed herself, and he's so I guess I have the ultimate proof that I wasn't the favorite.
Gosh. It's terrible.
And I only laughed because it was a comedian. So so moving on, my next note, we have been left to largely imagine what her grief looked like with how raw of a nerve her father has been since we met her, but now King is actually giving us a peek into it, and it is tough. We could assume that it was probably not a good time in the immediate aftermath of her dad's death, but now King's actually letting us see what that looked like, at least in part, and it's hard to see. And then my last note before moving on here, her wish for a single minute with him is brutal. What is sad is that she has even a fraction of a thought that he would say yes, that she had to do it. She has been gaslighted by Cordelia so much. That's because I get it. You kind of remember people a certain way. And for her dad, it's the honorable thing. We brought up the Ned Stark example last episode. It's Ned Stark was the most honorable, but it's there's two great things that he did, and they were absolute lies. One was because of a promise to his sister and protecting his nephew. Yeah. The other was to protect his kids at the end by basically giving in to Joffrey and stuff. Yeah. And it's do we not feel that her dad would probably do the same thing and see fuck, I may be the most honorable dude, but fuck honor. I'm not giving my daughter to that fucking 60-something-year-old disgusting mayor. Like, I just,
Yeah.
but the fact that she even doubts that is just, it's crazy to see.
Yeah, how much her aunt has influenced her over the years since his death.
Yeah, and I won't blame it all on Cordelia. Some of it's probably her too. She saw a lot of, like, honorable and truthful nature to her father, and then that it's kind of one of those things. Then you almost take to the nth degree, where it's like, well, the picture I have, and all of us have pictures of our parents as we're growing up. That as you grow up and become an adult, you're like,
it starts to change as you get older.
Because you're like, oh, there's illusions there. And it's like, as an adult, you're like, oh, my parents were probably dealing with similar things. And, like, the illusion is broken a bit. She's just too young to see that, like, yes, like, all of the illusion side of her dad is all she sees. And that allows Cordelia to then gaslight her and transform that positive image her dad tried to show for her into the manipulation to go along with this nonsense. So moving on, as she wept, she heard a branch snapping, and she looked up in terror and chagrin. This was her secret place, and she didn't want to be found here, especially not when she was crying like a kid who has fallen and bumped their head. Another branch snapped. Someone was invading her secret place at the worst possible time. She screamed, "Go away," in a tear-clotted voice she barely recognized. "Go away, whoever ye are. Be decent and leave me alone." But the figure she could now see kept coming. When she saw who it was, Roland, of course, she thought that it was a figment of her overstrained imagination. She did not know he was real until he knelt and put his arms around her, and then she hugged him with a panicky tightness. She started to ask him how he knew, and he interrupted her by saying that he saw her running across the drop. It was a place that he would go to think at times, and he would not have followed, but he saw that she was riding bareback and thought that something might be wrong. Because I would imagine that that's probably not something you would see and suspect something's up,
Yeah, especially in a horseman society. Like, they know what they're doing with horses. They don't just go out riding bareback.
Yeah. No, they're not Gandalf, after all.
No.
Although that wasn't a Gandalf thing. That was just Shadowfax wouldn't take his saddle. So
he's too good of a horse.
Yeah, indeed. She said everything was wrong. He began to kiss both sides of her face. When she realized what he was doing, and she realized he was kissing her tears away, he then took her by the shoulders and held her back so he could look into her eyes. He told her to say it again, and he will, and that he didn't know if that was a promise or a warning or both, but say it again and he will. She didn't have to ask him what he meant. She seemed to feel the ground move beneath her, and she would later think that it was the first and only time in her life that she actually felt caw. She thought that it was a wind that was coming from the earth rather than the sky, and that it had come for her after all, for good or ill. She grabbed him in a place that he probably most wanted to be grabbed, and told him that if he loved her, then love her. He said he will. He unbuttoned his shirt and took her in his arms. That's the end of the subchapter. Let me go ahead and hit my notes here. I'm not sure I've ever had a place like that, not particularly for grief, but a wholly private place. But I do know we all have those times we just want to be alone, and I empathize with Susan being invaded while being in that state of mind.
Absolutely.
Like whether you're a kid and you like want to be in your room, and that's not necessarily the most private place, especially, I mean, I grew up with a brother that largely we shared rooms. So it's like, but still for me, it isn't necessarily that place, but it is, I know that feeling. I think most of us know that feeling of times you just want to be alone, and
absolutely,
that's when someone usually shows up at the worst time usually.
Yeah.
And then do we think that Roland is really just thinking? He has been fixated on her so much, I wonder if his thinking is just cover for watching Susan's house. We've actually seen him doing that earlier in the story, where he was kind of just on a hillside looking at her house from the distance, and possibly for her, if she was out and about, what was he really doing? I guess that's a question I want to bring up, because ultimately we have actually seen him being kind of, there was that point, because I think didn't one of them call him, or they didn't call him out, but they thought it, where they're like, is he really just thinking, or is it because he could see the Delgado house from where he's at? Because it hasn't got out in the open with his friends yet, but they know. So
they know something's up with him and her.
Yeah, exactly. And so there was that point where they were like, one of them, I think it was internal, where they're just like, is it just because her house is visible? So I feel like we've kind of seen that already a little bit. So it kind of makes me wonder, was he truly thinking, or was he kind of just pining? A
little bit. I put it's possible, but from what we know of young Roland, he wasn't watching her house. He might have been where she would go out riding, hoping to run into her, kind of thing.
And that's what I mean.
And that's what I'm thinking is it's not him sitting on a hill where he would see the house, because that's a little too close to town. People might notice that. I don't remember that he was there before.
Well, they're a little bit on the
house.
outskirts of town
Yeah.
too, because they're a little bit more on like the horse area. So
they're out by the drop, exactly. Out at the barquet and everything. But I just picture him like, well, if she goes out riding, she's going to go to the drop. I'm going to go out there and think.
Yeah, and that's that part of the drop too, because the drop's a very big place. There's
Yes.
many places on the drop you could go.
But he knows that that's where she rides because they've talked about it.
And I'm not saying that as like a creepy way or anything for him. It is kind of the same
No,
thing.
this is a total teenager move.
Yeah, it's like in high school. It's like you have like two ways to get to class. One way's a little bit quicker, but the other way you might run into a girl you have the hots for, or a guy if you're
exactly.
whatever. Like whoever you are. If you're a girl, the same thing. And
The person you have a crush on.
Yeah, you're going to go
is
the long
coming
way
from the gym. But if you go the short way, you're going to miss the gym. So you go the long way, just in a chance to.
We've all done.
Oh,
that.
we've all done that.
We've all
Absolutely.
done. So that's what I'm saying. I guess definitely don't want to make it feel like I'm making Roland out be a creep.
He's up there just like, yes,
But
go for it.
we've also seen him where he was riding in a place purposely knowing that it might be a place she would be.
And that's what I think is like. He's out. He's like, okay, last time I ran into her, she was over here. She says she likes to ride down there, and I'm like, I'm just gonna go think, fellas.
Yeah. So he was feeling. So her feeling caught almost physically is crazy, but it shows that this is a big moment.
Yeah, that is big.
And we obviously knew last time. It's kind of hard because we're doing two different episodes that cross over this, but it's like it's such a big thing that happened with the mayor and then Cordelia's reaction to it that led Susan to this moment to finally kind of throw the inhibitions away and basically just well, she hasn't even said anything yet. She had made an action, but he's the one that said, offer me that again. Like, I'm not going to turn it down.
She does make the offer, so.
Well, she did it at Sc6-14. Here, he's the one that said, don't say it to me again or I'm going to do it. And then she grabs him. So I'm not saying that she's not. She's definitely inviting.
No, she says it. If you love me, then love me.
Well, yeah,
she says it here. So.
But ultimately, he warns her first because again, and it's carrying over from two things. There's a Sc6 thing where she kind of offered and he said no, and then there's the trauma that's all happening that's leading us. Mm-hmm. So it's just like multiple things cascading into this moment. But it is definitely a big moment because she is not necessarily even the biggest believer in Ka. It seems like from earlier in the story.
Yeah.
So for her to be almost feeling it physically is kind of wild. Also, this feels so good to finally see. It is like the will they, won't they that TV shows are famous for doing. Mm-hmm. They tease it. They have one side push in while the other pushes out and then inverts it. It just makes audiences go crazy to see it. So then when it finally happens, it's just such a joyous moment. I think Jim and Pam is probably one of the more popular of the last 20 years. Yeah. But it feels like every show, I mean, Cheers did it. Like, there's all kinds of shows throughout history that always do the will they, won't they. And this feels like King kind of doing the same thing. And this is just that moment finally. This is the moment where Jim pops in and says, hey, are you free tonight? You want to go to dinner? Like, that's a big moment in the office, right? And that's what this feels like, is finally the moment where, because again, she even offered at Sc6, and then he was the one that was saying no. So it's like they've bounced back and forth. It's literally like the exact same pattern we've seen in TV a million times. So kind of cool to finally see this moment here, and it's gonna
and here it is
gonna dominate the rest of the episode too. Most of this is related.
Almost all of it. So on to subchapter 7, it starts with the word Ka, and I just wanted to call this out a little bit. The way King formatted this is it says Ka, and then it has not parentheses, colon, a colon, and then the rest of the subchapters there, and then it has another Ka at the end. So it's just kind of interesting that it's like this is
like bracketed,
bracketed by Ka, exactly. They help each other with their clothes and lay naked in each other's arms. When he found his way into her, she felt pain give way to sweetness, like some wild and exotic herb that may only be tasted once in a lifetime. She held on to that taste for as long as she could. They made love in the willow grove, questions of honor put aside. As they climaxed, she began to covering his face with fierce kisses. And then this is a quote from the book to finish off the subchapter, a little short one. So were lovers joined in the barony of Magus near the end of the last great age, and the green moss beneath her place where her thighs joined turned a pretty red as her virginity passed. So they joined, and so they were doomed. Ka. That's what I mean. Like, it just bracketed the subchapter, and it's And I just put my note. Oh no! As happy as I am to see them finally, the will they, won't they, finally was resolved. I'm happy for it. I worry what's going to happen now because King just gave us that line. So they were joined, and so they were doomed.
Yeah.
Ka. Like, that's like, they're done. Like, it says so, right?
Yeah, and I would say we know the consequences. King has built this story up, so we kind of know what's at stake.
Right.
So this doesn't feel like it will end well, even without the hints from Roland's from the whole series to up to this point. Because like ultimately we got to remember there's been a number of things all the way dating back to book 1 that kind of reference the girl in the window.
Yeah.
Like there's been some things, including early in this book too, where he's kind of getting a little bit I don't know, not crazy, but like when the thinny's happening,
he almost passes out.
Yeah, and he says some things that give us an idea this is not a happy story. But even if you threw all that aside and said that Susan was never mentioned or alluded to once until this flashback happened, I still think that Roland's general disposition makes you kind of suspect that his life isn't full of happy stories.
No, yeah.
I don't look at like who we saw, especially in book 1, and think, oh yeah, this guy's had all kinds of fun triumph things throughout his life. Like this kind of just feels like
he's living his best life. Yeah. Absolutely.
that just doesn't jive. So it's probably a good guess that this isn't going to end well.
Yeah,
and it's also a Stephen King book.
Right?
Let's be honest here. There's not a whole lot of "and they lived happily ever after."
There's quite a few. I wonder if you go through and look at each ending, how many there are good versus bad.
I would say if you counted bittersweet as negative, I would say positives are a vast minority. Because there's a lot of bittersweet stuff, like like 11/22/63, for instance. Like that's one that comes to mind of like bittersweet, but it's very rare. I think it's probably just because I think prior to King, so many stories were like happily ever after, and it almost felt cliche. And those aren't that's not reality. And I think it's so often King tries to write to reality. I know that sounds crazy when he has demon clowns and shit, but I mean in terms of like true human nature, like very few people end with like happy endings. So it's like I don't know. I'm definitely not saying it is a bad thing, but his endings, they're not always all that.
There are some really good happy endings though. King doesn't get credit for him. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I don't know. So subchapter 8. So they lay in each other's arms, sharing the afterglow kisses beneath Felicia's gaze, and Roland felt himself drowsying. The strain of the summer had been huge on him, and he had been sleeping poorly. He didn't know it yet, but he would sleep poorly for the rest of his life. She asked him if he would take care of her, and he said yes. And I got a quote directly from the book. She says, quote, "I can't go to him when the time comes. I can bear his touches and his little thefts if I have to. I can, but I can't go to him on reap night. I don't know if I've forgotten the face of my father or not, but I cannot go to Hartthorn's bed. There are ways the loss of a girl's virginity can be concealed, I think, but I won't use them. I simply cannot go to his bed." And that's the end of the quote. But then going on to the rest of this little section here, he said, "All right, and good." Her eyes widened in startlement. He looked around for someone else who turned out not to be there, and asked what it was. And she said that she might already be carrying his child, and asked that if he had thought about that. He said he had not, but he did now. Another child, another link in the chain that went all the way back to Arthur Eld, who held Excalibur. But what would his father think, or Gabrielle? To know that she had become a grandmother. A smile had touched the corner of his mouth, but the thought of his mother drove it away. So that's a lot there.
Yeah.
So I'm surprised Felicia didn't bother them. I think most pet owners have experienced intimate situations where a dog or a cat is just lurking about staring, and it makes it all very awkward.
Yeah, Felicia's not that close.
I know, but watching though,
yeah.
and under Felicia's gaze, it's just one of those things. Like I don't know. It's just I think it's a universal thing for pet owners.
Oh, it is.
The pets, just, and it's not like they're actually like whatever, but it's like you got two leering eyes at you. So, and then my next note: whoa, Roland won't sleep well again. That's brutal. But it is. But is it that he didn't sleep well because of trauma, or because of his gunslinger's mentality that will end up growing further? Because we saw in book 2 where the breathing change of Eddie or Odetta caused him to wake.
It was
Odetta.
It was Odetta.
It was like
it was the switch from Odetta to Odetta.
I think there was two different. I think there was time with Eddie too where he's kind of being suspicious, and we've just seen that he has he can basically almost also put himself to sleep because Detta at one point, he knew that she was taking over, and then he almost stopped his body in a way to make it look fully like he was asleep.
He was fully asleep, but he was still awake.
Still conscious. So he just has these abilities that we've seen. So it kind of makes me wonder, or is it column A and column B here? But it just seems like, I don't know if it's a trauma thing, because I almost think that a trauma causing him to sleep poorly almost gives Roland too much heart than I give Roland a lot of credit for. So I really think what it comes down to is he's a young gunslinger now. He's only a few months being a gunslinger, and so maybe he just hasn't honed that ability to kind of sleep very shallow so that you're always on your guard. I don't know. What do you think?
I think it's trauma because the way King words it makes me think that it's not gunslinger training. He hasn't been sleeping well, so that implies that he has slept well in the past.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So,
and I would say before, like, his showdown with Cordy, and that's almost what I wonder. Like, is the last time he slept well, like, you know, like, before that? Or,
yeah, probably.
Or maybe even the last good sleep was before his dad came into that room with the prostitute.
Yeah.
Because he was asleep. He fell asleep
and
there.
He didn't wake up when his father was in the hallway.
Yes.
He woke up when his father
kicked the door in
and woke him up. So that's probably the last good sleep that he had. So I think that it's more trauma than, like, he's always on edge and stuff like, because he sleeps, like, he fully sleeps in books 1 through 3 and everything.
Yeah, but
like,
I think
when Eddie goes on watch and stuff like that, I don't think Roland's half awake the whole time. I think he goes to sleep.
But I think the smallest things will trigger him, except for when he's losing his mind.
Yeah.
Because he was actually sleeping there where Eddie, like, snuck up on him, and he's like, whoa, what the fuck?
Yeah, how did I get snuck up on? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so there is obviously extenuating circumstances. But my next note, Susan is finally in a spot to accept that she can't go to Thorin. Good for her. Because that's, I mean, ultimately, she's been struggling with that pretty much since page 1 of this part of the story. I know we got to keep remembering that there is the Blaine stuff at the beginning of this, so it's not the beginning of the book, but the beginning of this flashback, pretty much, she's not necessarily, well, she was maybe happy with it until Rhea popped her illusions of it. Because I think she had this whole idea that, I'm going to be this
honorable thing.
This honorable thing.
I'm giving him a son.
I'm going to have this baby, and we're going to be all happy, and, like, Rhea obviously being
a
witch.
He wants someone to fuck.
Yeah, pretty much. So
that's what it came down to.
So ever since then, though, she's kind of been struggling with this, and so it's good to finally see her just letting go of it and accepting the fact, like, no, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
Like,
I also appreciate that it was her choice, and Roland didn't do the thing that a lot of men who write women characters do, is that a man decides it for her.
Yeah.
It wasn't that. Somehow that would have cheapened it all for me if Roland's like, I can't let you go to his bed. And she's like, oh, okay, honey.
And he did say that.
He does say that he doesn't think he could.
But that isn't like, it isn't like to get this moment to happen or anything.
No, it's not a blackmail moment. This is her coming out and saying,
yes,
I choose this. And he goes, okay, good.
Yeah.
Like, that's a very real world situation for a good man. When a lot of men write females, and that's what I love about Stephen King is he doesn't do this here. A lot of men will write females that a man has to make the decision for her, because that's how some men think, and everything. So he doesn't do that. She chose to break her word. She chose not to go to the mayor. She chose Roland.
Yeah,
that's a very
in the light of her father, the vision of her father that is built up to where she's almost feeling like the judgment of God is a judgment of her father for breaking her word. So in the weight of all of that too,
she still chose.
All of what you're saying is true, but also let's keep into account the fact that she basically thinks that if her father is alive, her father may disown her at this point, which we know is probably not true. But it's like that's the way she thinks though, because Cordelia has completely gaslit her, right?
Has twisted her memory of him and how she thinks that he would react.
Yeah. So good for her indeed. I love that she is doing that normal childlike thing of overreacting to a thought and then immediately thinks someone, and he immediately thinks someone is there. Like it's just like I feel like we've all seen this with girls. Like it's just one of those things. Or kids in general, boys can do it too. But like where it's just like this overreaction of like something. But I just love that his immediate reaction is like someone's found us. Like it's their.
Well, it's a very guilty feeling.
Well, it's also the difference of their mentalities, right? He's a gunslinger. Yes, he's a young gunslinger, but he has been trained in a way to where it's like his first thought should be like, someone's found us. Like
I just go to the one that I'm most familiar with a man and a woman is we're driving in the car and my wife goes, and I go, oh God, what am I gonna hit? And she's like, look at this cell or whatever, like the stupid thing on her phone or so it's like, God damn it, not when I'm driving.
Yeah. Then my last note for this section, him calling his mom by her name. That's tough. I kind of hate Roland with this kind of shit because it's like father and Gabrielle.
Yes.
Like that's just such a.
I understand it completely where you're coming from. I just want to ask you a question because I saw your note about this and I just want to know why hate after what she did. Why hate?
Because it's still your mom. Like you can't. Like I don't know. Just like. and I get like you if you're being upset with your parents or whatever, but like this is such he's removed enough from it now. This isn't just heat of the moment.
Yeah.
Now it's like a thoughtful. He's at least having time to think it through, and in his mind, not even just like he's doing it to like hurt her, but in his mind now he's like almost disassociating. You know, like
he's lowered her status from mother to Gabrielle.
Yeah, and we just talked about the crow, and it's like mother is the name of God on the lips of all children.
Right.
Like you think of things like that. But also it also reminds me, book 1. You know, Jake was always just the boy. He would never allow himself to get attached because he knew that it wasn't good ultimately. So
It
it's like
changed her- it changed her status.
He also started to dehumanize Jake more the closer they got when he kind of realized like as they were and Jake realized it too. You know, he's like, you're gonna fucking kill me. Like I'm not gonna keep going.
Yeah.
And he started to like dehumanize him, and I just to see him doing the same thing to his mom, like that is inexcusable to me.
It's his mother, yeah.
Yeah, that's like, and I'm not saying everyone with their mom, because yeah, you have those abusive moms and stuff like Carrie's mom, but it's like his mom is far from that, and it's just like, dude, and it's the thing that's frustrating is I feel like we've probably all been in those situations, especially when we're younger. When you're younger, the whole world is black and white, and it's so easy to think that you're white and you're judging the bad, like you're on the good side, and you just judge and look down your nose at people. And it's like as you grow,
Yeah, obviously that's a bad person. They're doing a bad thing.
yeah, as you grow older though, you start to realize there is no white hats and black hats, but there's gray hats, and you start to like you have like as an adult, I think you're able to empathize more with other people and decision makings or whatever else, and I get it because I know he's just a kid, but it's just like it's just the hateful thing that a teenager would probably do to their parent, and it's just I can't stand that.
It's those ones that you see it in television, and I've experienced it as well. Is that there's those kids that, oh, dad cheated and broke up the marriage, and now I have I have this stepfather that I don't like. Not that he's abusive. It's just I don't like him because he's not.
I really don't like him.
I really don't like him. No, I don't. And everything, and so they call him. They start calling their dad by his name.
Yeah.
That's what's happening here. It just shows, going to my note, it just shows how he is feeling towards her. I never really connected how much he is actually, like, mad at her.
Yeah.
Now, Martin, I understand his feelings towards him completely. He's the home wrecker.
Yeah.
Right? But I just never really clicked with me, like, that he's, like, furious at his mother.
And I don't think I ever noticed this moment. Yeah, and I don't think I noticed this moment until doing this, like, here.
Right.
Like, to actually, like, going through it line by line to realize, like, wait a minute. He just said father and Gabrielle.
Yeah.
Like,
he
that's...
makes a point, and that's in his head,
and that's
like
just in
you
his
were
head.
saying.
Yeah, so it's not even, like, a performative thing of, like, he's saying it in front of both of his parents, where it's like, Dad and Gabrielle.
To hurt her.
No, it's like, this is truthfully how he's, like, internalizing it.
Internally thinking that.
And that's
That's
tough,
a whole
man.
other level of kind of a hatred there and everything, which is interesting.
And you can't do that.
I understood, like, we have the scene where he flashes back and it's him leaving with his buddies.
And she's in the
distance. in the distance or up in a window or one of those two, and he just glares at her.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, yeah, he's still pissed. He's going to go calm down. This is months later. This is what, like 3-4 months plus travel time to get to Magus.
But I think another part of it when you're asking like why hate is because also like I think there's a black and white nature to being younger, but also I think like the level of like malignant hate that kind of thought takes is something a 14-year-old shouldn't be able to even like comprehend, let alone have in themselves. So I think there's almost like yes, I know that in a lot of ways Roland's above his age. Like he's obviously been trained as a gunslinger, like whatever. He's not a kid like Jake would be a kid. But at the same time, there's like elements of like believing in certain like whatever. And I just think like that like a hate of that level is something that should be alien to a kid this age. And to also aim that same hate at your fucking mom, like
I think
brutal.
the number one reason why you would have this kind of a hate is the breakup of your parents' marriage, especially in a situation like this.
Yeah.
The other thing also is like he has to keep it to himself, you know? He's not going to go running around saying, my mom's a cheating whore, because you don't want to air your dirty laundry kind of thing.
Yeah.
Roland's not that kind of guy anyways.
Yeah.
You know, and everything. It makes me wonder, does Cuthbert and Alan even know about his mom's indiscretion?
I don't know.
I mean, I think everyone kind of knows,
That's
right?
a good question.
Like,
that is a good question.
At this moment here in Magus, does Alan and Cuthbert know? There may be rumors floating around about her and
I think the gunslingers
Martin.
know because we saw that dance
That's in book 1, right? A flashback where it's
Gabrielle and Martin are dancing, and it said everyone was clapping, but the
gunslingers don't clap, right?
Yeah,
exactly.
So, and it's like I don't think that's a thing of like, oh, gunslingers just don't clap. No. It's because they knew
something was up, and it's going to be a problem.
And we all know in the future, we as the future looking back know that Steven knew. So
he says
it's
I've known for 2 years.
Yeah, so it's like, is it a matter of he told his gunslingers?
Or did they just figure it out because they're not fucking blind kind of thing?
Exactly.
And which makes me wonder, are the kids naive enough not to know?
Or not to pick up on the talk of adults.
These are gunslingers in training. They hear things.
But it's also one of those things that parents talk and then kids will hear that shit.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's a good question. I don't think I've ever thought about that. Does Cuthbert and Alan know?
That his mom cheated on his dad.
Did he even tell them? Like on the trip on the road, do you think that he may have?
No way. No way. I could not see Roland being like, well, he hasn't shared this story with anyone, kind of thing, right?
Yeah, maybe.
So I don't think that he would share it with Alan and Cuthbert on the road, like, yeah, sorry, I got us kicked out. We got to go right away, guys. But my mom was banging my dad's advisor, so I got pissed and went and kicked Court's ass and became a gunslinger apprentice. So, sorry, guys. Let's go on to the next one.
The only reason I would ask is because it is his closest friends, and it's like if there's someone that you're going to try to get stuff off your chest with, and maybe even they're asking dude, what the fuck happened, man? We were just in class yesterday, and then suddenly you're
kicking Court's ass,
challenging Court.
Your Hawk's dead, you have guns, what the fuck, man?
It's kind of one of those things where it's like I couldn't imagine there's not questioning about it, but unfortunately to this point I don't think King's given us any indication on that, so it's nothing we can truly know, but it is one of those things questions had to have come up, so it's a matter of what did he say or not say.
Well, it's also a question of they're gunslingers. How much do they question? Are they good little soldiers? Yes, sir.
And
no, sir.
I think it'd be more from the friend perspective than gunslingers. So I do think that these guys are young enough that there's going to be two parts of their relationship.
Yeah.
There's going to be the part that he is now a gunslinger and we're kind of his. What is it? What's the word?
Subordinates.
Yeah, subordinates. Page is that
underlings?
Yeah,
apprentices.
Like you're under his protection, and then there's going to be the other side of it where they're just friends, right? There's going to be times around the campfire where they're cracking jokes, and there is no higher respect of oh, that's Roland the gunslinger, but it's just, oh, that's fucking Roland. We've grown up together. There's going to be that, I think. Still, that's how I envision it.
It's kind of the same dynamic that we've had at work. There's been times where you were my supervisor, and everything. There's still work conversations that have to be had, but then there were still bullshitting sessions that happen.
Exactly.
And stuff was talked about.
Yeah.
That's what you're talking about, is that something like that probably happened on the way out.
That would be my guess.
I don't know. I just see Roland as more closed off, He is not an open book. He doesn't share his feelings very often.
Well, the Roland we know.
This is true. This is young Roland.
This is younger Roland. So, and again, ultimately, I think Cuthbert and Alan are probably the people that know him the best on the planet. I don't think his parents know him as well. Even Court, teachers always know more than we want them to. That's the Padme line.
Yeah.
But ultimately, still, there's going to be a familial thing with his friends that's different.
I bet you Alan knows because of the touch.
Yeah, that could be too. Yeah. Hard to hide things from someone with
Maybe he just came out and said it because he fucking knew that they probably figured it out or heard it somewhere, or Alan got it from just get it out, air the dirty laundry. Okay, now let's on with the mission.
Cut the awkwardness and just get over it. So let's go ahead and move on to the next part of this section here. He told her if she carries his child, it is his good fortune, and she says it is hers as well, but admits they are both too young, little more than kids themselves.
Yeah, too true.
Roland reflects on this in the perfectly Roland way, and I have this directly from the book. He rolled onto his back and looked up in the blue sky. What she said might be true, but it didn't matter. Truth was something, or sometimes not the same as reality. This was one of the certainties that lived in the hollow, cavey place at the center of his divided nature. That he could rise above both and willingly embrace the insanity of romance was a gift from his mother. All else in his nature was humorless, and perhaps more importantly, without metaphor. That they were too young to be parents. What of that? If he had planted a seed, it would grow. Quote, and then he says here, whatever comes, we'll do as we must, and I'll always love you no matter what comes. So that's the end of the direct quote. She smiled, and he said she said it as a man would state a fact, like the sky is up and the earth is down. She asked him how old he was and was troubled that as young as she was, that he might be younger. When he concentrated, he could scare her, but when he smiled, he looked more like a little brother than a lover. He looked older. Or he answered, older than when he got here by far. And if he had to stay another 6 months in the side of the coffin hunters, he'd be hobbling and need to be boosted onto his horse. Which that's a funny line. Yeah. Eddie would be proud of Roland because that's, I don't know, that's not a full on joke, but that is kind of funny.
Yeah, it is.
She asked if he'd take care of her, and he said yes. Roland started with a little more foreplay, and she responded as he would want. She then says that he must take care of her, and she has pinned her everything on him and cast all else aside. So my first note here, glad someone is thinking about the fact that they're both children. I know kids this age love to put themselves a bit above children, but someone pushing 40, yeah, these are fucking kids.
Dude, this was my only note I was going to have in this section, and you beat me to it. It's like, fucking Ariel from Little Mermaid is the prime example. I'm 16. I'm not a child. Yeah, you fucking are. You're closer to a child than an adult. Shut the hell up.
Yeah.
Go wash the dishes. You know, just like, God
Yeah.
damn, I hate that.
Yeah, exactly. That quote section is a really cool insight into Roland's nature and the fact that his ability for romance comes from his mom. I love the thought that he is humorless and, quote, without metaphor. It is such a perfect encapsulation of Roland.
Yeah.
Like, without metaphor, right? That's just like a perfect encapsulation in a couple words. Humorless and without metaphor for everything we've been saying for how many books now. The whole idea that Roland can't think around corners, that he's very just black, like not black and white in a good way, but black and white of like everything is just is or isn't. Like, he's just not... He doesn't have that poetic nature, which we're now seeing like Cuthbert has, right? I think Eddie has it too.
Oh, yeah,
but it's
absolutely.
like Roland just doesn't. He's just, I'm not going to say he's simple, but it's like emotionally he kind of is. Like Roland's kind of a one note. I mean, now we're seeing a lot in this book that's new to us, like seeing this romance and stuff, and for him to address it comes from his mom. But it's like that's the dual nature that he mentions, and it is kind of an interesting thing, and it really enriches his character for me because I mean we've also seen a lot from him in the previous books. The fact that he was kind of the Terminator, and the fact that over the course of the third book we kind of saw him become a little bit more human. We saw him losing his mind. We saw him crying. We saw him giving up his guns because he couldn't be trusted with them.
Yep.
You know, we saw a whole gamut of things from him that really broke the mold on what we thought Roland was. And this is breaking it even more because suddenly now it's like, holy shit, like he's got romance. Like,
Yeah.
that doesn't seem like anything
Would
he
have
would.
never seemed like it, especially after like Allie in book 1, the only other time we've seen him take a woman.
Yeah.
It was just sex. There
Yeah.
was no connection. There was no romance, like you said.
Yeah, and I have a
everything.
note on that somewhere in this thing about Allie. It's same, with that general idea that it's like we've seen even sex with him before, and it's not this romantic. What we're seeing here, it's
an
not
emotional connection, not just sex. That's
Yeah.
what it is for him. And it's interesting because like I see a lot of parallels between not necessarily that aspect of Roland, but one of the aspects of Roland that you just lightly covered here is the it is what it is.
Yeah,
That's very much a Tad thing that
Yeah.
I see with you, and I've known you for over 20 years. There's very much times where I've come to you and been like, oh my God, this is happening. Like, what do we do? And you're like, we'll work on it.
yeah.
There's no reason. There's no reason to get in a hubbub over it.
Yeah, freaking out's not going to help anything.
Yeah, we'll
so-
figure it out. That's very much a Tad thing. So it's really interesting to see like the parallels between you and Roland there.
And I think that's why I was always drawn to Roland because I think there's like if it comes down to like trying to fit yourself to the characters, like Roland's the one that I fit closest to up to this point of the series where it's like, you know, and most of what you're going to establish those things are in the first couple books. You know, I think that's why you were more attracted to Eddie because it's like, you know, you've got both the humor but also like that emotion and that like wearing it on your sleeve, like if
something's fucked up, he will tell you that it's fucked up, which is exactly how I am. It's one of those things where it's like, oh my God, that was a car accident. Oh my fucking God. You're like, shit, that's a car accident. Well, we should probably go help.
Yeah,
that's the difference between Tad and me, and that's the difference between Roland and Eddie. It's a perfect example of it.
There was one point, and this makes me sound terrible in some ways, but I was in with a couple people. I was in the back seat with someone that was a little bit more emotional, and we were up in like the Sugar House area, which is kind of an area where it's like there's a lot more foot traffic in Utah.
Yeah,
it's a neighborhood of Salt Lake.
It's just on the outskirts of downtown Salt Lake,
and there's like one road that's pretty busy, and we were on that, and I think it was 3 lanes wide, and we were in the one of the 2 left lanes, and it was like slowed, but the right lane was kind of moving quickly, and we saw a pedestrian walking, and the person next to me started losing their fucking mind. Like, this person's about to get hit by a car, and I'm like, but you know, they're like almost getting hysterical.
Yeah.
And me, like, I see it, but it's like freaking out's not going to do anything.
There's
about
nothing
it. Like,
we can do. We're not even driving.
Yeah.
Neither
like,
one of us. Both of us are passengers. Neither one of us.
Exactly. And it's like that's like 50 yards ahead of us. Like, we're seeing it, but it's like he's flipping his fucking lid.
Yeah.
And me, I'm just like, yeah, here we go. Like,
all right, buckle up.
It didn't happen, luckily, but it's just, that's
a perfect example of Tad being Tad.
Yeah. The last bit worries me a lot, just from what we know of Roland with letting Jake drop and the eternal thoughts that he would betray any of his for the tower that we saw in book 3. He said that this story would stand place for all other things in his past, and my thoughts immediately went to, is he going to betray her?
Yeah.
That was my first thought in this moment, where it's like she's basically laying it all out there, where it's like, hey, Jake did the same thing.
Oh, yeah.
You know, he's like, I'm fucked without you. I'm a kid. I'm in a world I don't know. And Eddie did the same thing. He's like, we're fucked without you. Like, Roland's had that laid on him multiple times. And in both those cases, 1, he did betray Jake. 2, he, in his mind, he's like, I won't betray you guys. And then in his head, it's like,
will I?
In his head, it's like, did he really believe that?
Well,
So, like, ultimately, that my first thought is like, okay, I've seen this movie before, and Roland didn't do well. Well, he didn't do anything to Eddie and Susanna, but he certainly accepted the fact that, if it comes down to my tower or these guys, like, they don't stand a chance. And Jake, he did it. So my first thought is like, oh my God, is he gonna fucking betray her? And like that now, like my stomach started to like clench just thinking like, what's gonna fucking happen here?
Right.
Like, I'm worried about Roland because I know enough about Roland at this point. So Baraki says truth versus reality is such a genius observation and something the young don't often grasp.
Yes.
And, exactly. It's kind of interesting the areas that Roland is like beyond his years, and other times that he's like his age or even young. You know what I mean?
He's like so far behind.
It's definitely it's the duality he's got.
Yeah.
That's why I think we love this character so much.
Yeah.
So going on, he told her that he would do his best, but told her for now she has to keep going as she has been. There was more time to pass, and he knew because DePape was back, but they had not made their move yet. Whatever they had found out, Jonas still felt it prudent to wait, which would make him more dangerous when he did make his move. But for now, it was castles. She said, but after the reaping bonfire, and he cut her off, saying that she would never go to Thorin's bed. Now Susan has her turn for some foreplay, which led to another round. And when they were done, and it says in parentheses that for Roland it was better than the first time, if that was possible. Roland asked her if she felt like they were being watched, like she had at Sitgo. She said that she didn't know, as her mind was preoccupied as she touches him in a sensitive spot. He took her hand away and remarked on how beautiful the place was. As her eyes closed, he felt himself drifting as well. And he thought it ironic that this time she did not have the sensation of being watched, because he did, and he would have sworn there was no one near this grove. But no problem. The feeling whether it was Megrim or reality was gone now. He took her hand and twined with her fingers with his and closed his eyes. And that is the end of the subchapter. So his answer is not filling me with confidence.
Yeah.
It's just, again, I'm just suddenly the alarm bells are ringing for me the first time I read this, because I was just like, I've seen this before, man. Like, I thought it one thing, like, if this ends tragically, Romeo and Juliet, whatever the fuck, like, that was kind of the gist I got going into this the first time reading it, where I'm like, when I started to realize, like, oh, it's kind of a love story, and the first thing you set up with us is that she's like promised like a very powerful, like, it just felt like, oh, Romeo and Juliet-ish. Like, it just feels like maybe
it's
what
not
we're setting up.
The forbidden love. It's not supposed to happen.
It's not supposed to happen, and like Roland said some things that makes us think this isn't going to end well.
Yeah.
Okay, if it's going to end tragically and whatever, but that suddenly to add the idea that it could be betrayal, that was, I wasn't ready for that thought, and I think it pretty much dominated my mind the rest of the way reading this story.
It would change Romeo and Juliet quite a bit if Romeo cuts off Juliet's head,
Yeah.
kind of thing. It's like, oh, that changes the story a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. So that's, I'll just say that is for my first time reading it through, when I read it through, that was a dominant thing from this point forward, that I was very worried about Roland. So we'll, if I bring that back up again, just know that was very present in my mind the first time. Giving us an update about the state of the Castles game, definitely nerve-wracking when you know the opponent should be doing something and they don't. No matter what it is, games, usually games, but anything. Whenever there's something, it just always makes you almost more nervous.
It makes me think of I don't know if it was Napoleon or Alexander. I can't remember which one of those great leaders. I remember reading a story about one time where the opponent they were going against laid a trap. Like, it was a beautifully laid trap. He should walk right into this valley and we'll ambush him and it'll be game over.
Yeah.
And he didn't walk into the trap, and I just remember reading the accounts of the people on the other side being like, what What the fuck's going on?
Yeah.
Why aren't they doing it? What the hell's and
Yeah.
it unnerved them so much that they ended up attacking.
I think that was
and-
Napoleon.
And falling into his trap.
Yeah, I think it was that snow.
It's the
that
snow one.
That snow battle he had. I
It's
forget
like-
the name. I'm not a big Napoleon guy, but I remember
it's like
that, yeah.
it's like very clearly he should be attacking. Like we are clearly leaving it open for him to attack, and he's not doing it. Why?
Yeah.
Oh my god, he must be up to something. Quick, charge! And then they get fucked.
Yeah.
By doing that.
Or a band of brothers. They're right out there. Let's just go get them.
Yeah, let's just go get them.
No, we have perfect cover here.
Nope. Ambush.
Same thing.
Yeah,
right? It's
exactly. It's like it's this thing where it's just like they do that.
Yeah. Yeah. The Mongols are famous for that. That
Oh,
was
yeah.
like one of the most famous plays is they would like start a siege on a city or a
Oh,
mainline
no!
battle. And
Oh,
then-
no! Run
then-
away!
Then they would retreat and everyone's like, oh, cool, they're retreating. Let's go
Let's go get
massacre
'em.
them. And then they would just get caught into a pincer and
And then the rest of the army would just be
And-
like, "Hello."
and no one ever fucking learned.
No, well,
Hundreds.
they didn't leave anyone alive to learn. So
Hundreds and hundreds of years, multiple Mongol waves, and
Yeah.
nobody ever learned on that. That is frustrating. Admiral Akbar could have told them.
and
It's a
it's a trap, and that's what Roland's dealing with right now is that they should be falling into the trap, or like you said, they should be doing
They
something,
should be making a move.
and they're not. And so you're just sitting there going, "The fuck are they doing? What the fuck are?" It's like watching the spider on the wall. It's
Yeah.
like you threw something at the spider; it should be reacting, but it didn't move. It's like, what's it doing?
Yeah.
What's it doing? Just don't take your eyes off it. Though.
It's like when cats get really like tense, and you know they're ready to just. It's like when if something touches them, they'll spring like 10 feet in the air.
Yeah, it's like,
and they're
what are
just
they doing?
They have that tension. Like that's kind of what it feels like. So it does relieve me that he promised she wouldn't go to Thorin's bed.
Okay.
I wouldn't suspect that he would let that happen for any reason, but to hear him actually state it, it makes me feel better a little
Yeah.
bit. So I like that. Now Roland is feeling like he's being like they're being watched. Wild, he is so dismissive of it now that it is his feeling.
Yeah.
Because he was kind of just more like pat her on the head. Oh no, you're fine. You're just imagining things when it was her. Now it's him, and it feels like he's kind of just letting it go. Like that's weird. Like
Yeah.
I think he would be like getting up, getting dressed, and like like moving out in like a grid pattern and figuring out like is there someone around?
Like there's someone here. Yeah, and that's what I put my note here is especially since they're naked, very obviously just had sex and out in the open, so natural time for a nap, right? Like what the hell?
Yeah. Come on, man. Again, he's a kid.
He is a kid.
He's barely got his guns for the gunslinger side of things. So we can't judge him by book 1 or 2 Roland. He's not.
This is true.
He's far from there. So, but still, makes you want to pull your hair out.
Many wheels and many years away from that.
Yes, indeed.
So that takes us to Subchapter 9, and I drew the short straw, Dad. I got the Rhea chapter.
Short straw.
Short straw.
I wanted the Rhea chapter. I love Rhea. Let's give a round of applause for the return of Rhea.
No. All of this Rhea saw. Oh, what?
I was going to say, we're going to get horny Rhea like the first couple chapters of this book.
Stop it.
When the grapefruit
You stop it.
gave her some
Stop. All of this Rhea.
some moist feelings.
Stop it.
Her nether
God
realms.
damn it, Tad. I need a spray bottle so I can just be like, you're a cat. No. Bad Tad.
I love that it affects you so deeply.
I'll put-
it is pretty gross.
I'll
but-
put whiskey in the spray bottle. That way it'll shut you up as you're trying to catch it in your mouth. Because spraying you with water won't do anything. Holy water might, though. That might make you burn.
Then a crow will come in the room and
Demon.
peck at you.
Demon. All of this Rhea saw in the glass. She found it very interesting, not the shagging parts, but who was doing it. She thinks she had seen a lot of shagging since there were 3 or 4 even more partners doing it at the same time, and even sometimes with partners who weren't precisely alive. Yucky. But all this wasn't interesting to her as at her advanced age. See? No, not interesting, Ted. It was what would come after that interested her. Is our business done? The girl had asked. Mayhap there's one more little thing, Rhea had responded. And then she told the imprudent troll what to do. She had given the girl very clear instructions as they stood in her hut doorway, the kissing moon shining down on them as Susan Delgado slept the strange sleep, and Rhea stroked her braid while whispering instructions in her ear.
And up to this point, we haven't figured out what this is yet. Let's make that clear too. So
Right.
that we've heard that something else happened and we've had allusions to it, but we still don't know. So
No,
we're
and
still
there
in
wasn't
the dark.
even like inclinations to this. Like you mentioned before, we've come back to Rhea once or twice since then.
Yeah.
And nothing was brought up about it.
Yeah.
It just was never mentioned. I just put my note, oh no, this evil witch.
My note has has all that she's just mentioned seeing been since she got the glass, or does she have other means? I mean, I know some time has passed, maybe a month or whatever, a little bit of time since she got the ball, because she got it the same night she inspected Susan. But still, that's a lot of sex to see in a few months.
Yeah.
Like,
I think
especially the breadth of what she's saying. Sometimes there's 5 or 6 people. Sometimes there are corpses. And I just feel like that's a lot for like a month and a half, 2 months. Like,
I don't know, because if that's all she's doing,
maybe.
Which we know that's what she is, just that. So we see some pretty deplorable shit in this pink glass. We know that for a fact.
Yeah,
so.
for sure. It's just that's just.
It's not like it takes breaks and shows good things. It only shows bad. So if you're looking at it 10 hours a day, you're gonna see a lot of shit.
Yeah.
So, no,
I can't wait to see Rhea on screen.
Oh God, no! I hope they cut the whole character.
I don't know. They've got to get the perfect person, man. Like that's just going to be a role of a fucking lifetime if they get the right actor.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So going on, twice they had done it, and Rhea wasn't surprised they could. They were young after all. She thought how sexy you feel in a few minutes. She thought how sexy you will feel in a few minutes, you snippy bitch. Thinking about Susan.
Yeah.
She leaned closer to the glass and into the pulsing pink light thrown by the glass. She sometimes could feel a light aching in the bones of her face, but it was a good ache. They were done and drifting off to sleep, holding hands. We remember now, my little one, be a good girl and do as ye were told. As if hearing her, Susan's eyes opened, but there was nothing in them. She was awake and asleep at the same time. Rhea saw her pull her hand free from the boy and get to her feet, but then her cat Musty jumped into her lap looking for either food or affection. Rhea shrieked in surprise, and the ball went dark at once. It puffed out like a candle flame in the gust of wind. Rhea shrieked again and seized the cat before it could run, hurled it across the room into the fireplace. Rhea cast a hand at the fireplace, and a fire sprang up, setting the cat's tail on fire. Musty screamed and fled from the hearth with his eyes wide and his split tail smoking like a cigar butt. Rhea yells at him to run and calls him a vile cusk. She turns back to the glass and waves her hand over it, but it will not light again, no matter how hard she concentrates or wills it to glow. This was a big disappointment for her, but there was nothing to be done. Very Roland thinking right there. And besides, in time, she would see the results with her own eyes, if she cared to go to town. Everyone would see, in fact. Her good humor restored, she returned the ball to its hiding spot. King really ramped up the anticipation here. Not only are we worried about what is going to happen with Susan and Roland for what they just did, but now this vile thing is watching her and has Susan doing something. Again, we still don't know what.
Or if it's to her or to her partner.
Or something else. Yeah, it says that everyone will know in a minute.
Yeah.
Like everyone will be able to tell kind of thing.
Yeah. My note, and I remember being worried because now not only does someone fully know what's going on, but it's a malicious person and not just Roland's companions. What is this witch going to do with that information?
Exactly.
I remember that being like the alarm bells that went off in my head. It's like, cool, Cordelia suspected because of the dance and like whatever, and like a few things, like she's also paranoid, but it's like, and then the boys suspect, but it's like those are friendly people, right? It's like now you've literally got maybe the worst person that could possibly know, because if there's one thing I know about witches, they're malicious.
Yeah.
And what more pleasure could she have than to like expose that? That's my first thought is like, is it to Thorin? Is it to Cordelia? It just feels like one of those things like witches love to see the world burn. So,
well, that's why she loves the pink ball so much, is it just shows her bad in people.
Yes, so...
And she wants to see this impotent call of a girl punished for her insolence, basically.
I remember thinking that with Susan when she was getting lippy. I'm like, don't do that to a witch, man.
Never to a... there's certain people you don't poke them. You just don't. Witches and bears.
And, look at, don't, what is it, gypsies and Thinner.
Oh yeah,
there's that whole thing, or of course the gypsy in Mystery Men
Thinner
that he farted and blamed it on a gypsy, so she cursed it. The spleen.
The spleen.
So my next note also seems like the glass has a mind of its own. So it was on and showing, but for one reason or other, it went dark, and nothing Rhea could do would turn it back on. It's not necessarily how I envisioned an object like this would work. I would have assumed, generally speaking, with like a seeing glass, that the whatever fucking creature that held it, a witch or a warlock, whatever, would have some ability to like turn it on and off, I guess.
Yeah.
But this seems like it almost has a mind of its own.
Like
which,
it's almost sentient a little bit.
yeah, exactly. And it's nothing like, it's not like Musty like went and hit the ball or anything. It's just it may have even just been her concentration broke off of it,
Yeah.
not whatever. And it wasn't just that it was a concentration loss and she could just concentrate again and turn it back on. I guess that's the thing that kind of surprised me. I'm not the biggest fantasy guy, so I can't say that I have like this advanced knowledge of fucking seeing glasses throughout all of whatever, but just how I interpret them is they're usually like, the villain, whatever it is, rubs the ball and it shows whatever they want, and then it just turns it on. It's like a light switch.
Kind of like a crystal ball from like a gypsy fortune teller. It's like they wave their hand over and you ask the question, and then they direct it to show them the answer.
Yeah, I think there's some Disney villains that have like seeing glass type things, and there's the one that has the mirror, I know.
The mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all. Yeah, that one.
Yeah.
And it tells her, but...
Yeah. But this one seems like it's a little bit more, which is pretty par for the course for this
It's a witch thing I see, where like they're stirring the cauldron and they
doesn't
cast
Wizard
something.
of Oz, doesn't she have seeing glass? Because she watches them on part of their journey.
Yeah, and she's like, oh, that's where they are. Go, my monkeys, I think is what it is.
Those things freak me
It's
out.
been a while
when I was a really young
Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, me too. But I think the last time I did watch it, though, was at least high school or older. But I remember when I was really, really young, dude, those fucking monkeys freak me out.
Flying monkeys, man. Not good for the health.
And now as an adult, I respect how evil monkeys and primates can be in general.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I don't think I feared them enough as a child.
No.
I do now. Now, can you imagine?
They were always friendly and happy and everything like that.
Dunstan checks in. You got movies like that. Like or Ace Ventura. There's always nice monkeys. But as an adult, you realize like, no, they could be vicious
and eat your face.
Yes, indeed.
And other parts of you that should never be eaten. My last note here is just poor cat. Musty deserves better.
And then my next one, #justice for Musty.
That's right. Lock her up. Throw away the key.
I'm surprised you have any empathy for Musty. Thought you would just guilt by association for Ermot and Musty.
Ermot has guilt other than just being associated with her.
What? Because he's a snake?
He's a two-headed snake. Can you trust anything with two heads?
I mean, I think snakes are awesome, and I think a two-headed snake would be pretty cool. It'd be a fun pet.
Not a venomous one.
Well, if there's no danger, there's no fun.
That is a debate we will save for another day.
Also, if she cared to go into town, it's a line I've never really stopped and considered. Do you think she ever just went into town? Yeah. And also, imagine what that looks like, her just strolling through the main drag of Magus. Like, I don't know why, I just always think I've just assumed that she just, like, could, like, send for things or whatever. Like, it's almost like Amazon delivery type thing. And, like, people would, like, cater to her a bit. Yeah. It's just, like, I don't know, and it kind of reminds me, like, the Grinch. Like, imagine, the Grinch in the Jim Carrey movie, that point when he's, like, openly just walking around, everyone staring at him. I couldn't imagine because everyone kind of knows her and knows, like, her reputation. So I can't imagine that would be a fun thing for everyone, for her to just be in town.
Yeah.
All right. So let's move on over to Subchapter 10. Only moments before he sunk too deep into sleep to have heard it, a warning bell went off in his mind. It may have been just that her hand was no longer in his, or perhaps that it was pure intuition. He could have ignored just the faint bell, and almost did, but his training was too strong. He came up from the threshold of real sleep, and it was hard, but it got easier as he neared wakefulness as the alarm grew. He opened his eyes, and Susan was no longer by his side. He looked toward the stream and saw nothing, but he knew that is the direction that she had went in. He called to her and got no response. He got up and went towards his pants, but when Court's voice entered his head and said there was no time, maggot. He went naked to the bank and looked down, and Susan was down there naked with her back to him. She had unbraided her hair. It hung nearly down to her hips. That is pretty long. It's very rare you see hair that long on people.
That is a long hair.
I think the longest I've ever seen is I saw a girl, and she was shorter, but still the hair went down to like where her knees, like, and like, dude, that's nuts, dude.
I knew a girl at one of my old jobs that her hair would touch the floor, and she was not as short as my wife. She's not as short as my wife.
That's nuts.
She had never cut her hair in her entire life. Like,
wow.
trimmed the edges and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But never a full-on cut in her entire life. And she was like 24 when I knew her.
I think average with ladies or even dudes with longer hair, I think it's like the middle of your back. It's about as long as you usually see hair, so that's
It just
long.
gets, well, my wife says it just gets too heavy. It like pulls on your head.
Yeah.
You used to have longer hair.
Yeah. Got mine down to the small of my back, I think,
Yeah.
probably. So got to be kind of a nuisance, though.
That's why you shave your head.
And you'd also never know it looking at me now.
No.
So she was on one knee with water almost up to her elbow. Her arm is in the water, seemingly searching for something. He called her name and she did not respond. He thought a demon had infested her, but did not believe it. If there had been a demon in the clearing, he would have sensed it. Both of them would have, as well as the horses. But something was wrong with her. She brought a stone out of the water, held it in front of her eyes, and tossed it. She reached back in the water. Part of her hair floated in the water. She's going that far into the water now that her hair is falling into it. He calls her name again, no response. She pulls another stone out of the water. This one was a triangular white quartz that looked like the head of a spear. She used the other hand to take her hair like a woman might to comb a nest of tangles. Roland was frozen in terror, thinking that she meant to cut her throat with the stone. For weeks later, he would be haunted by the thought that if she had meant to cut her throat, he would not have made it in time to stop her. So that's a
Fun thought to dwell on.
Yeah. So I reference his ability to come out of sleep easily in the second book. Well, it looks like that is far from a refined skill at this point, because it's talking about like a struggle. Like he's getting right to that cusp of like deep sleep. And I almost feel like you see those like ones where someone's deep in the water and they're just like struggling to like swim up. And that's kind of how I'm envisioning it. And it's like versus like.
Yeah, he had to like fight his way up.
Yeah, versus like book 2, it's like immediately.
Click.
Yeah, not even just immediately awake, but there was one point, doesn't he like immediately wake up to like, and his gun is drawn, like it's like a flash. Like he's like not just immediately awake, but immediately awake and ready to fucking go.
It's
like,
also very impressive when you think about the one where Detta turns into Odetta, and he was aware of it, that it was coming,
because her breathing changed or something.
And her she had the sign of like the headaches beforehand.
Yeah.
He's like, okay, I need to watch her and everything. And so when he went to sleep, he told Eddie to, be on your guard.
Yeah.
And Eddie still, of course, falls asleep because he's.
And that's when he
fucking
lets
Eddie.
him get brained. He's like, he could have stopped it.
I got to teach him.
Yeah, he's like, he's got to learn.
But the impressive thing about Roland with this whole sleep control thing here is that when she wakes up, I think you referenced this earlier, he actually puts himself to sleep for like a minute. And he's like, okay, in a minute I'm going to wake back up, kind of thing.
Because it's the point. Yeah, it's that same time.
It's where she's like, okay, is he actually asleep or is he just faking it?
Exactly.
And she watches him, and so he's like, okay, I actually have to go to sleep. So he goes to sleep, and then she's like, okay, he is asleep. Then he wakes back up instantly. That's the level of control we're talking about. Is not what Tad's mentioning here is that's what's not refined.
Yeah.
Because there's an impossible level of control when you think about that. When I'm asleep, I'm fucking out.
Yeah.
There is no control. I don't control that shit.
You wake up, Meyer.
Meyer. What? What day is it? What year is it? Kind of thing. But Roland's able to stay awake, sense that she woke up different.
Yeah.
Go to sleep when she looks his way, wait till she is satisfied, and then come back awake.
Yeah.
That's a whole level of control that we're not seeing.
We're not
here.
there yet. We do have a much younger Roland, so I'll give him a break.
Give him a break.
I also love Court's voice popping up in the story anytime it happens.
Oh yeah,
it's just a treat. Also, they need to get a good actor to play Court, because I do think that you almost turn the volume up a little bit and have Court's voice show up more often.
Yeah,
I think that'd be kind of cool.
And right here, just no time, maggot.
Yeah, exactly. And I just feel like you don't have to go like full on like Joker and Batman from the one game where he's like there all the time. But I do think it'd be kind of cool to like, take like, say there's like 20 times that Court pops up through the whole series. I don't know. I'm just pulling numbers out of my ass.
Right.
I would say like maybe go up to like 30 or 40, even like almost double it, or if not fully double it. Because like if you get a good enough actor like a Mark Hamill, like that'd be a good voice to have.
Yeah.
Playing through the series.
You just hear the voice every once an episode, once every other episode kind of thing. Where it's just like, if it's a Roland thought that should be heard, like Roland's thinking it, have Court say it.
Yeah. Yeah, that could be a good like cheat to getting to some of the internal monologue.
Yeah,
is it vocalize it through like
have Court say it.
Yeah,
have that voice in Roland's head say it.
Yeah. At first, I thought the idea that he would sense a demon might just be being cocky, but then when he said that she and the horses would also know it, makes me think that demons aren't subtle. This isn't like an exorcist where the demon can get in there and subtly be there for quite a bit before it's like full on.
Right.
Like this sound. I mean, I guess the one demon we've seen was actually pretty noticeable too, right?
Yeah.
In the speaking ring.
No, in the basement. That was an oracle in the speaking ring, wasn't it?
That's still it's all this
Tomato-
demonic shit.
tomato, tomato?
Like everyone kind of knew what was happening. So yeah, I would say that in this world, it's probably a good rule that demons are not subtle.
Yeah.
That will like slowly play their long game. They're going to be like fucking hurricanes coming in. So
Yeah.
that's interesting to know.
This is something I didn't realize until this episode when doing our homework and everything like that. Just makes you realize how common demons are in the real world, where he has knowledge of them.
Yeah.
Must be from school because he doesn't have any real world experience
No,
yet.
he doesn't- yeah.
This isn't after the events of Gunslinger where he's experienced a speaking demon down in the basement.
Because he mentioned it something to Jake too at one point where he's like, at least the machine's not possessed. Because I remember we harped on that where it's like, wait, a possessed machine? Like,
what the fuck does that mean?
And kind of what you're alluding to now, though, is like this wasn't just like something that Roland maybe have come across. Could have been something he learned from like Court and Van A, where it's like, yeah,
it has to be.
machines can get possessed,
Yeah.
and like he just knows.
But that's
that.
what I'm saying is like he has to have had instruction on this because
Yeah.
this is his first fucking mission.
Yes.
This isn't a 5-year vet or a 50-year pro or anything like that.
Yeah.
This is his first fucking mission, so he has instructions on that.
He's
and
still
everything.
wet behind the ears, for God's sake.
Exactly. And it does go into it a little bit more where he talks about demons later and everything. So it's just
Yeah.
like, I wanted to bring it up here because it's the first mention of it. Like, wait, so they teach that shit in school? Like, goddamn.
Demonology.
Demonology.
I would have taken that class. Roland being frozen in fear is wild. I know he is just a kid here, but barely a gunslinger. But damn, his reflexes have been superhuman. When we've seen him as an adult, so to see him so opposite is just shocking.
Just to
And
see him freeze for a
I know
second.
he's 14, but it's like, my God, man, this is Roland. Like, he's literally been like in the throes of fucking blood poisoning and been like sharp as a fucking tack.
Well, even him versus Court, look at how sharp he was. And he was
Yeah.
just a boy then, too.
Yeah.
So it's like, and the Traveler's Rest, he was on his game there.
Yeah.
Like he knew
To hide.
He knew to stoop down and hide from
Yeah.
Jonas because Jonas was going to be
Was going to
looking
look for him. Yeah, exactly.
Like,
So
that's sharp.
yeah, so this
So
is
to see him just completely freeze is so uncharacteristic.
it really is. It
Yeah.
really is. You're right. Adding some of that kid stuff too. It's like, yeah, this is. So yeah, not even just to say
not just the adult
no,
Roland.
this is very unusual for Roland altogether.
Even the kid one, yeah.
yeah, which makes you wonder: is his view on relationships maybe poisoned by this moment?
Oh.
You know, because obviously the connection with Susan's pretty
Every
deep.
time I have sex with a woman, she tries to kill herself. Oh my God.
Well, no, but in terms of like he cares for her,
Yeah.
and it causes him. That's probably what causes him to freeze, right? Is like someone that he truly cares
absolutely
for.
it
Like
is. Yeah.
there's a danger there, and so is that something that could spell the rest of his life, where it's like he's never going to let someone get. He's always going to keep them at arm's length a bit. Like he's never going to let someone get this close because
he feels that he's a pariah.
he just saw what happened. Like
Yeah.
it just made me freeze. Like, and it says it haunts him for weeks. And if she had tried to go for a throw,
Yeah.
he wouldn't have been able to stop her. So it's like I just wonder. Like we're in the origin story of Roland in a lot of ways.
Right.
It kind of makes me wonder: is that some of the reason that we see Roland the way he is with Jake and Eddie and Susanna? Like he's kind of kept all these guys at arm's length. We've seen him letting them get a little bit closer.
Yeah.
But it kind of makes you think. All through his even go back to Allie and stuff, like he's not let people get close to him.
No.
Is this maybe an origin story as to why?
Yeah, it very well could be one of the reasons why.
Yeah, because I mean, you would from
I
everything.
mean, you saw what happened with Allie.
Yeah, and
that's in book 1. That's something that has happened, and
Yeah.
is like we can talk about that. Like,
yeah,
he did not let her get close. It was a thing.
Yeah.
it was not even a relationship. I couldn't even call it. It was
No.
a fling.
Yeah.
and everything. And then he told her not to do something, but he didn't stay and make sure she didn't.
Yeah.
He didn't take her with him.
yeah.
And then she comes out screaming about that she asked.
He,
And what does he do? Bang.
yeah. Seemingly,
And he said it was merciful, too.
yeah. Seemingly, he cared more about the mule than he did Allie.
He did.
So, which is sad to say, but then his paralysis broke and he hurled himself down the bank, unmindful of the sharp stones that gouged the soles of his feet.
Ow.
Before he got to her, she had used the stone to cut off part of her hair that she held out. He grabbed her wrist and pulled it back. He could see her face now. What could have been mistaken for serenity from the top of the bank now looked like what it was, emptiness. She moaned in pain. Some of the cut hair laid on her thighs, and the stream had taken some away. She pulled against him, trying to get the stone back to cutting her hair. They struggled like an arm wrestling barroom contest, and she was winning. He was physically stronger, but he was not stronger than the enchantment which held her. The stone moved towards her hair as she murmured, and he told her to stop and wake up. The stone moved closer to her hair, her cheeks, and her eye. He put his mouth near her ear and clucked his tongue. She jerked at the sound, her eyes fluttering. The stone flew into the water, and she woke up. She rubbed her wrist, and Roland thought that it would swell, which kind of gives you an impression of how tight he would have been.
And how strong he is, yeah.
Yeah. She asked why he had hurt her. She asked how they got down here and asked if he had carried her. He picked up some of the hair off her thigh and showed her and told her that she was trying to cut herself with it and didn't want to stop. He told her that he hurt her because she scared him. He checked if she had a broken wrist, and he did not think that she did.
Yeah.
So that's the end of the subchapter. Cut up the soles of his feet on the stones. That's going to hurt once the adrenaline wears off.
Dude,
and
that's one thing I can't handle.
And that's one of those wounds, like, it never gets, or I'm not going to say it never gets better. It takes a long time to get better because you're always on your feet.
Yeah.
You can't, like, rest. Like, when you cut your like one part of your finger that you can kind of avoid, like, using for a while,
yeah.
It helps it heal quicker. But, like, what are you going to do? Not walk?
Yeah.
That's just not possible. Those are the worst. I think the only ones that are worse is on a joint. Because you always got to move your joint.
You're bending, like on your knuckle.
Yeah. I've had it on my elbow, too.
Mm-hmm.
Those wounds are probably my least favorite because, like, you can't even put a Band-Aid on them.
No.
Like, it's just, you're dealing
there.
with it.
I
Yeah.
got to deal with this for the next week and a half, 2 weeks, you know? That's what it is.
It's the worst.
I can't stomach the whole feet thing. That's, like, the one thing that I'm, like, an incredible wuss about.
Yeah.
Like, stepping on things, not wearing shoes.
Like Marv.
Oh, yeah. No, it doesn't, like, gross me out or anything. I mean, obviously the nail through the foot's not a pretty
That
sight.
sound.
Yeah. It is what it is, but it's one of those things that personally, it's just me. Like, I stepped on a Lego the other day. My wife dropped a Lego accidentally building her new set, and I stepped on it, and I was just like, ow, fucking ow. And it was stuck to the bottom of my foot. So it wasn't just one step. It was like, ow.
Yeah.
And then you take the next step, which is always, like, exaggerated and, like, even worse. So it's like, motherfucker.
Yeah.
I can't stand the bottom of my feet getting hurt.
Indeed. I agree. So just like a demonic possession in our media, she is stronger with the enchantment than she would be otherwise. That's fun to think about.
Yeah, that's terrifying.
I like the clucking thing to wake her up. It feels like you'd expect he'd have to slap her. So for King to get more creative with it is awesome.
Yeah, especially with it being tied in with like a horse thing. You know, like you cluck for her. Come on, let's go. That's exactly what I picture him doing here.
Except very loud, like one that a horse might hear a mile away.
Yeah, exactly.
So like right in her ear.
Like when you're herding horses, like you would use it.
Yeah.
And so even over like the stamping feet and everything like that.
Yeah.
Come on, let's go. Hey,
Yeah.
hey. And for that, you know, she loves horses. She's been around them all her life. For King to use something that associates like that, that directly associates to Susan.
Yeah.
I love it.
Indeed. So then my last note. So she's finally out of it.
That's finally snaps out.
And so now we also kind of know what it is too. Like it was to cut her hair.
That's what it was.
So yeah, that's kind of a reveal of now we kind of finally know Rhea's time bomb that we've been waiting for since the very beginning of this story. So pretty wild. All right.
So subchapter 11, Roland had tied Rusher so no one would see him from the drop. Roland says to be easy for a little longer, talking to Rusher. Russia stamped and wickered as if he say he could be easy forever. I love his horse, by the way. Roland fetched a steel pot from his saddlebag and started away, then turned back. He reached under his bedroll. He had planned to sleep out on the drop and pulled out a small metal box. He opened it with a key from around his neck. Inside was a locket on a fine silver chain. Inside the locket was a drawing of his mother and a handful of extra shells. He took one of these, the shells, and returned to Susan. She says she doesn't remember anything after their second time making love and falling asleep. Then she asks how bad her hair is. He says he doesn't think it's bad, but she would be a better judge. He fills the pot of water and she sets it down and she uses the reflection to check her hair. After checking it, she says that she can hide it, and when it's braided, no one will even be able to tell. She says that a woman's hair is her vanity. Then she asks why she did it. Roland had an idea that if hair is a woman's vanity, then this would be a woman's nastiness. A man might not even think about it. The mayor's wife? Roland thought not. Most likely it had been Rhea that had set up the ugly trap. Mayor Thorne had meant to wake up the morning after Reap with a hangover and a bald-headed gilly. And I just put here in my note, I just had to stop here and just put, damn, he's good.
Yeah.
Like, holy shit, he's good. And then we kind of alluded to it. This is obviously the big payoff for what Rhea told her to do.
Yeah. and it's been like alluded to a few different times now. I feel like there was a hint dropped at one point with one of our Rhea scenes a few weeks back where she just said something about wait until whatever. And again, just I feel it was just King kind of reminding us that like, hey, remember there was something unresolved here. So, so he meant to sleep out on the drop. So either he really wasn't watching for Susan or he really was.
It's one or the other. It's no middle.
This isn't just like I happen to be out, whatever. So yeah. And hey, sleeping out on the drop to watch for her, that would be a little bit creepier.
That's creepy.
Although, do you give a break to a kid though? Because I feel like a lot of kids like do what you would interpret creepy as an adult. Yeah. Right? Like some of the crush things.
They go to a soda shop or a fast food place because they know that their crush likes to go there a lot.
Or works there.
Or they end up getting a job there just because they frequent it a lot. That would be considered creepy for an adult to do. Yeah. Like if I did that, like if I was single, and let's use you as an example. You are single. If you did that because you like this girl and you go get a job where she frequents, that could be considered creepy.
Yeah, that would be creepy. But when you're a kid...
puppy love.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe I'll give Roland a break. He said it was not that bad, but she would have to be the judge of it. Is that their version of does this dress make me look fat?
Yeah.
It's like the male thing where it's like, I don't know, doesn't look that bad to me, but you'll have to be the judge.
Yeah, you gotta figure it out. I don't know. I'm just a guy.
Yeah, I like the observation about women's vanity and women's nastiness. It reminds me in the real life of the manners of murder could be more inclined to one gender or another. The one example I've seen is like, for instance, like mass shooters are almost entirely men. Mm-hmm. It's very rare that it's a woman mass shooter. Also, when it comes to like more up close and personal things, men tend to use blunt objects and women use sharp objects.
Yeah.
As well as I actually read a thing not too long ago in the last number of months where it was a thing talking about with women, women are generally better at murder as they're more rare at doing it, but when they do it, they end up being better at it a lot of times because they're like tend to be a lot more like caught up in cleanliness and meticulous, like being meticulous, clean, everything about it. To where there's been times that with women killers, like a murder can go undetected for months. Yeah. Whereas like when the man does it, they find the next day, it's like, oh my God, this person's been murdered.
And they were beaten to death with a hammer.
Yeah, it might take them time to like figure out what happened, but it's like with a woman, there's times where it's like, 3 months ago, this person got fucking stabbed in the heart. Like we just now found out. So it's just those kind of things come to my mind when like Roland's kind of, in his mind judging what's like, well, if it's a woman's vanity, that's probably a woman's like malicious whatever. What did it say? A nastiness.
Yeah,
kind of reminds me of that stuff.
The one thing that pops into my head with what you're talking about, the difference between men and women, is one thing I read is that women are more inclined to take pills to commit suicide.
Yeah.
Versus men who will shoot themselves.
Yeah.
There's a difference there. There's and what I read was the reason why women are more inclined for that is it's less of a mess.
Yeah,
that's one of the things I read.
That's what I mean. Like, that's what I'm talking about with the murders is cleanliness.
The cleanliness of it.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. That's what popped into my head when you said that.
Or if they have a crime scene, like they will clean it.
Yeah.
And it's like a man may not or will be a lot clumsier with it.
I actually listened to a true crime podcast where a intruder broke in, murdered the husband and one of the 4 children, and then was chased off by neighbors or got scared by a dog or something, drove him out of the house. It was like a person who was mentally challenged, like had mental issues, and was hearing voices and stuff. And there's a conspiracy theory because when the cops showed up, the crime scene had almost entirely been cleaned up. The husband had had his clothes changed and the kid was changed. And it's like, wait, why did you do this? And the mom was like, well, it was a mess. I had to clean it up.
Yeah.
And it's just like, that looks suspicious as hell.
Yeah.
But that's what you're talking about here. Is that's just kind of like some women have that nature where it's just like it's got to be clean.
Yeah, or if you want to get even more grim, I know that when it comes to like people murdering their children, women tend to suffocate the kids where men will shoot or stab, usually shoot, but it's like, again, it comes to like there's a marked difference where like a cop can walk onto a crime scene and sometimes be able to tell away.
What's the manner of death? It was strangulation. It's probably a guy.
Yeah, it's like there's chances they can, not 100%, but there's a chance they might be able to know what the gender of the person is that committed it. So
I will get that a lot. I've been watching Criminal Minds with my wife, so I see that a lot with them, like profiling, like, this was personal. This was vindictive. This is probably a man.
The only one that the media has invented, though, is women using poison more. That's actually not true. But that's one that gets perpetuated all throughout. I mean, probably because since the black and white era of Hollywood, they've always had like that, vindictive wife that poisons her husband, and it's just like so.
Yeah.
It's been built in media where there's this in people's heads where like, I mean, I remember thinking that not like in the last couple of years where I thought that was true, and then I looked it up and it's like, oh God, it's not.
No.
Yeah, you're not more inclined to be male or female with poison. But,
Nope.
So
You're more inclined to be fucked, is what it is. Some poisons are bad, dude.
yeah, indeed. All right. What do we got?
You got one more note.
Oh yeah. Good. You missed it there. I always wondered if this had gone the way Rhea wanted. Does she think that the mayor won't suspect her being behind it? Also, is the mayor and the town folks even a threat to her?
I think that's what it is more so, is that maybe Susan would just be cast off as insane. The mayor would just be like, oh my God, I got an insane Gilly. Get her the fuck out of here.
Do you think they would even suspect Rhea?
Some might, but I wonder if there's so I think there's option A and there's option B. Option A, they suspect her, but they ain't going to do a damn thing because they're fucking terrified of her. Or B, why would they even suspect her? Because she's just insane. Obviously, she's just insane.
Yeah.
It's not like it's not like Susan knows about this.
Yeah.
Susan doesn't know why she did it.
Yeah.
And that's what she would have to tell the mayor. I mean, let's take the Rhea aspect out of it, and let's look at this as it's Reap night. They go to bed. They do their thing.
Yeah.
He wakes up to her completely bald.
Yeah.
What's he going to think? And when he asks her about it, she's going to go, I don't know why I did it.
Yeah.
He's going to be like, all right, what size straight jacket do you wear?
Yeah. And did you drink a lot last night?
Yeah. Well, all right, let's go ahead and get her out of my house, kind of thing.
Which, with as much as he cracks his knuckles and Harry and all that stuff, like she probably would want to drink that night.
No kidding.
All things considered, if Roland wasn't in the picture, if it were going to go the way all things were supposed to be planned from the beginning, chances are she would have drank probably a lot.
So it makes you wonder what would happen to Susan if this had gone to Reap Night and this happened with the mayor. Would she be killed?
I don't know.
Would she just be? Is that how
and
what do they do with people? I mean, we see the Shimi still alive.
And is that enough for him to cast her out?
Yeah, is that
having her
is that
one
a
time?
Nope. You broke up. You were of sound mind and something happened. So nope, I'm not paying you.
Honestly, as sad as it might sound, I don't think he cares.
No.
He's
that's,
Sorry to put.
I don't like that thought.
Sorry to put that thought in your mind.
Oh, I don't like that at all, Ted.
Yeah, I don't think mind is anything he gives a hell about. I think
you're not wrong. The only thing I would think that he would. Well, I don't want her passing it on to my son, kind of thing. So maybe.
But again, does he even want a son?
That's not what Rhea says. Rhea says no.
But that's what was sold to Susan.
Yeah.
But in the true reality of it, do we think Thorin gives a flying fuck about having a son?
No.
So.
Maybe a little bit. Maybe it's like 98% and 2% yes.
Yeah. Like I think it's more of just a fringe benefit. If I happen to get a son, then that's
cherry
fine.
on top. Otherwise, who gives a fuck?
Yeah, pretty much. That's gross.
So, yeah, on that happy note, so he goes on. Roland asks Susan if he can try something. She gave him a smile and say, didn't try something you didn't try up yonder? What you will, is what she says. He says nothing like that and opens his hand showing the shell. And she says he says that he wants to find out who did this to her and why. She looked at the shell and Roland started moving it along the back of his hand, dancing it back and forth along the knuckles. She watched this with a child's fascinated delight. She asked where he learned that. He says home and it doesn't matter. She asks if he is hypnotizing her. He says I. And he doesn't think it is the first time. Then he asks, may I? She says, I, if you can. And that's the end of the subchapter. And then I have a note here saying, I remember being doubtful that this was going to work. You see it all the time in movies and TV shows where the witch casts some kind of protection against someone being able to find out,
Yeah.
I think, I can't remember which one it is, but there's a show where they go snooping around a little bit and all of a sudden the person just gets blasted across the room.
Yeah.
Because they tried to figure something out.
Yeah.
And it's like, no delving into my secrets. Like, fuck off.
Yeah.
And everything. So it's kind of interesting that Roland's just like, yeah, let's figure this out.
Yeah. And my note, plus we saw Roland do it to Jake, but that's a Roland from the far-flung future. He may not be as capable of it now.
Yeah.
Could even be a thing of is Roland capable? Not just a witch's protection, but it's can you even do this? Like, we can't take it for granted because we've only ever seen this from a far future Roland, not a kid Roland.
Exactly. And so I always picture Doc Holliday rolling a poker chip whenever this bullet trick comes up because he's hypnotized Jake earlier.
Yeah. Yeah, and for me, it's not just Doc. I think it's actually a Val Kilmer trademark. He does it with coins, chips, and various other things in a lot of different roles. And I actually used to know how to do it. Doc Holliday was the inspiration for it. But I learned to do that at one point, but I haven't done it in 15 years. So
Lost it?
Yeah, I doubt I could still do it, but it was pretty cool for a bit when I could.
Yeah.
All right, subchapter 12. He could. The speed in which she went under confirmed that it happened to her before and recently, but he could not get any answers from her. She went under easily, but she would not go beyond a certain point. She told him about Rhea's examination, and it made Roland's clench his fist so tight his nails bit into his palms. But she could not remember beyond a certain point. She remembered being at the door and the moon on her face and Rhea touching her hair and being revolted by the touch, especially in light of the earlier touching of by that hag, which that's not a fun thing to remember either.
No.
She remembered that the witch had whispered in her ear. Roland asked what, but she said that she didn't know. The rest is pink. He asked what she meant. She said, or she just repeated, pink and bright like the moon. She said that it became like the moon, the kissing moon perhaps, a bright pink kissing moon, as round and full as a grapefruit. He tried other ways into her memory, but had no success. Every path ended with the pinkness, first obscuring her memory and then coalescing it into the full moon. It meant nothing to him. He had heard of blue moons, but never pink ones. The only thing he knew is the command she had been given to forget was powerful. He thought about taking her deeper, but he didn't dare. Most of his experience had come with hypnotizing classmates for fun, and Court and Van A had always been there to set things right if things went sideways. Now there was no one to step in. For better or worse, the student now ran the school. If he took her too deep and couldn't get her back, and what if he took her too deep and couldn't get her back out? He had also been told that there were demons below the mind, in the below mind as well. And if you were down there, they could come swarming out to meet you.
I picture like the Evil Dead kind of thing, like here's mommy kind of thing.
Yeah,
like,
or you see like the first person
yeah,
demon just zooming out some darkness.
Exactly.
Yeah, indeed. That's not a happy thought.
No.
Kind of cool world building. Someone who has been hypnotized before is easier to do to again. And if it's been more recently, they go even easier.
Yeah.
Because he's able to kind of gauge, like, yes, it's happened to her and also recently. So that's kind of cool.
Look how fast she went under.
Yeah, so that's kind of cool. I think I've heard, like, in hypnotism that, like, if it's happened to someone, they're more inclined to it again. I've even been to, like, the whole stupid fake people that say they hypnotize people, and they ask if has it happened to you before? And I've heard it said, like, yeah, if you've been hypnotized before, you're easier to hypnotize again.
Yeah.
But it's never been a matter of, like, oh, did it happen to you last night? Well, then I'm really going to have an easy time. I think that's, like, an added thing that King's added in here, and it's kind of cool.
Right. And then my note here, the fact that Roland talks about this is something he learned in school is really cool. This is a trick real gunslingers would use in their adventures, going out and doing gunslinger things. It's like, all right,
on their tool belt.
All right, let's talk here. Watch this bullet.
Yeah. Baraki says Rhea could have put protection on it, but at the time Roland was not in the picture, and she didn't think anyone in town could even try. That's,
which goes to the point that we were talking about. There is no fear for her.
Yeah.
With doing this to Susan.
Yeah. Yeah. My next note, I love seeing Roland's reaction to Rhea's inspection. I remember it made me believe that Roland would be the one to end her. Like, that was the moment where I'm like, okay, cool. Like, you know, it's one of those things, you add anger from one character to another, and that's usually the first signs that there's going to be a showdown. So that made me happy.
Yeah.
The pink of the glass is like a roadblock to an actual memory. What is wild is that Rhea used it in such an effective manner. Remember, she got the ball like an hour before Susan showed up.
Yeah.
So it shows how powerful she is, that not only is she able to, like, immediately use it, but use it in such a powerful way. Like, that's wild.
Here's a question for you. This actually just barely popped into my mind hearing you say that out loud. Is that Rhea or is that the ball? We had a conversation earlier about the ball sentient.
Yeah.
Is that ball just protecting its owner?
Or is it that she's doing what she would have done, but the addition of the ball is where all the pink is, right? Because maybe it would just be blank, but the ball is right there, and it's kind of like the Lord of the Rings ring, right? Like it has like a malicious element to it.
Yeah.
And it's like, so what would have just been blankness of, like, I don't know, is now pink, because of the ball. That could be.
It's just kind of interesting to think about because we were talking about how the ball acted when Musty jumped up. It's not like you said, Musty didn't smack the ball or anything.
No.
Just startled Rhea that she shrieked, and the ball's like, fuck you.
Yeah.
Dark. You know, like,
bye.
Bye. I'm out. And, you know, and everything. So it just kind of makes you wonder, would those spaces, again, kind of like what Baraki said, is like, maybe she set up protection, maybe she didn't.
Yeah.
If she didn't set up protection, why wouldn't Roland be able to see that part of the memory? But I think the ball recognized that there was a danger because the ball can see things, right?
Yeah. And it showed showed Rhea Roland.
Showed Rhea Roland.
Which
and
could
it's
be
like,
a warning
maybe
thing.
It's trying to warn her about
Yeah.
him. Hey, you got to watch out for this fucker kind of thing.
Yeah, this is a gunslinger.
And then literally a half hour later, she's doing this thing to Susan, and the ball's like, God damn it, I got to protect her.
Yeah.
Let me block out these parts of it.
Yeah, could be. Could very well be.
Yeah.
My next note, the concerns about taking her deeper is also cool world building, and it also places Roland, this Roland, far below the Roland that we've seen before. This is a Roland that has only used it for tricks on his friends and not life and death situations.
Yeah.
So kind of a cool world building thing. And also demons in the depths of the subconscious. That's fun.
No.
That's something else. Man,
That's a no for me, dog.
I kind of think we need some maybe a full-on Dark Tower demon novel is what we need, because there's been a lot of allusions to demons, but we've yet to really have like a full-on fucking demon. I mean, we've had some demon encounters certainly,
Yeah.
but it's like I feel like you could almost do an entire book just based on like a gunslinger going up against some sort of demon. Like, I don't know. Just give me more demons.
Went through the keyhole.
All that aside, it was getting late. It would not be prudent to be here much longer. He asked if she heard him, and she said that she did. And he said that he would say a rhyme, and she would wake up, remembering everything that they have said. She understands, and then he says, "Listen, bird and bear and hare and fish, give my love her fondest wish." Her smile as she rose to consciousness was one of the most beautiful things he had ever seen. I didn't take a note on this, but let me just pause right there. So is that up to this point, or is this when flashing forward to Roland telling Eddie and Susanna and Jake, and that still is true, that it's one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen, is her smile coming out of it?
I'm going with the second one.
That's kind of what I'm wondering.
That makes me happier.
Yeah, and it's like, yeah, because that adds a lot more to it. I mean, a 14-year-old, like, great.
Yeah.
You've been around for 14 years. Good on you, kid.
Yeah,
but it's like if you're centuries-old Roland that's seen a lot of shit, like that says a lot.
Yeah, 14-year-old. This is the best burger I've ever had. It's like, shut the fuck up. You're 14.
Yeah.
The hell have you experienced?
It's like one of my favorite things is in 2008, like right after Obama won the election, I saw a thing on TV and it showed like a 6-year-old. They were interviewing on the news, and he's like, "I'm just so glad to see a black president. We've never had a black president in my life." And it's like, he's 6. It's like, you've literally had one president.
I've only had one.
But it made me laugh. It's that ultimate thing. Yeah, you always hear these kids will give these proclamations, and you just laugh because you're like, you are so young. Like, but yeah, it very well could be, because again, we got to remember Roland is telling this story
to the content.
It could very well be that is a true statement still, where it's like it's still one of those beautiful things I've ever seen. I would imagine Roland's seen an awful lot. We know that he's traveled far and wide and seen a lot of interesting things. So
absolutely.
She hugged him and kissed him and told him that he was her fondest wish. They made love again. They're on the banks beside the babbling stream, and that's the end of the subchapter. Let's see. Baraki has something. You want to read that?
Yeah, I'll read that while you do your note.
And see if it's something that we can read. Spoiler-wise. If not, we could save it till the spoiler section. I think this is the first time we have seen hypnotism where the person is told to remember everything. I remember at one point Jake has asked if he wants to remember, and he says emphatically no. So this is one of the first, because usually it's like common in media and stuff with hypnotism is you're going to forget everything. Like, you may have to do something when I tell you, whatever, like you program them for something. But very rarely do you wake someone up in hypnotism and say, like, you're going to remember everything we just said.
It's honestly even rarer than that. I was thinking about this when I saw your note, is there ever a choice?
Yeah. I mean, he gives Jake a choice.
No. In common,
normal,
in normal TV shows and movies, is there ever a choice?
No.
You hypnotize someone, you find something out, but there's a reason that they can't remember it.
Yeah.
You're not going to be able to change that.
Yeah.
They come out and they're just like, well, what happened, guys? Well, this is what we found out. Really? That's what I said? That's what I did?
Yeah, no,
that's
true.
That's kind of an interesting thing that Roland even has a choice back with Jake.
Yeah.
But here, you're absolutely right.
And it was Jake's death.
He got
it was remembering
he got Jake
his
to tell him
death,
about the getting run over by the car.
And he's like, do you want to remember this?
He's like, No.
Like, no.
No.
Why would I want to remember that?
Baraki says that the Bends of the Rainbow don't care a lick for who uses or owns them. They are all malicious and only act to cause pain and chaos. If Grapefruit blocked her memories, it was to cause trouble, which we already know that it's malicious and everything like that, and that it's not a very good thing.
Yeah.
So that's why I felt comfortable reading that. But he actually makes a good point. It very well could just be protecting itself, not her.
Yeah.
That's why
she is the protector.
That's
of it right
why
now.
she's that's what I was thinking is like she's
Yeah.
the protector and keeper of it. That's why it would protect her.
Yeah.
But when you look at it just from a purely standpoint of what it's blocking out the memory of it, that it exists at all,
Yeah.
that Susan saw it.
Because she did see it.
Exactly,
and
she did.
Rhea doesn't know that she saw it.
Right.
But it knows that she saw it.
So it had to have been the grapefruit then that programmed it.
Yeah, because
into
Rhea
Susan.
wouldn't have even known.
Rhea wouldn't have even known
To,
because
like,
it was when
over-
Susan went outside the shed
Yeah.
to get wood that she saw it.
Yeah, indeed. You know, one of my favorite images in my brain is Rhea's hut, just in the darkness, kind of, and it's just like the doorway is open and it's just a black maw. Because isn't that what she sees when she comes up and then she hears the voice of Rhea from inside? That's just such a creepy fucking image in my mind.
The black
Just this,
maw of
like
a door.
black hole of the fucking door that's pure darkness in there. Like
It's what you see
like-
with like haunted houses.
Yeah,
It's like-
exactly.
It's like you're walking past the house that supposedly had 4 people murdered
yeah,
and everything, and then you just hear as the door opens, but it's a black maw behind it.
yeah, indeed.
Yeah.
It's like the hut's just got a mouth and it's like, come on in,
Come in. Come closer.
little beastie.
Wake up. Come closer. My only note here for this this part of the subchapter is, dude, I love that rhyme.
Yeah,
It's great.
indeed. Baraki says the ultimate crazy cat and snake lady.
Yeah.
Then my last note, I like this rating of her smile coming to consciousness is one of the most beautiful things you've ever seen because it's so un-Roland. It fits this 14-year-old Roland, but it just doesn't. I don't think that Roland has necessarily cataloged the most beautiful things. Like say whatever Roland closer to the age of the first book. I kind of doubt he's like, oh, look at that flower. It's one of those beautiful things I've ever seen. It's just,
Right.
I don't think that's Roland's style. So it's kind of
Roland
cool.
would most likely have stepped on that flower if it led to him getting closer to the man in black. So,
Indeed.
all right. So we're on to subchapter 13 now, right?
Yep.
All right. 20 minutes later, he
The penultimate subchapter for the
for the
section
episode.
here.
Yeah.
And the section.
Oh, that's right. Section 2. Yeah.
Yeah.
20 minutes later, he boosted her onto Felicia's back. Susan leans down and takes his face in her hands and kisses him soundly. She asked when she will see him again, and he says soon, but they must be careful. She says as clever as 2 lovers ever were, and thanks God he is clever. Roland says they can use Shimi if they don't use him too often. Susan asks if he knows the pavilion in Greenheart. He does, and thinks about how it has quaint paths, umbrella shade tables, grassy dance pavilion, and a menagerie. She says there is a rock wall at the back between the pavilion and the menagerie if he needs her badly. He interrupts her and he says he always needs her badly. She smiles and says there is a stone on one of the lower courses, a reddish one, and that her friend Amy and her used to leave notes there. Roland says aye, and he thinks that Shimi would work. The red water rock would work for both of them would work for a while if they were careful. But no matter how careful they were, they would slip eventually because the big coffin hunters knew more about Roland and his friends than Roland had ever wished. But he had to see her no matter the risk. If he didn't, he might die. Oh, the teenage angst! I have to see her, or I'm going to die. That's just one of my first notes. It's like, oh my God, I have to see her, or I'm going to die.
Yeah. I mean, at the same time, make fun, but I'm pretty sure I've heard those kind of things from you.
Oh, you have. I'm not. I am the pot calling the kettle black, and I will admit it. There is the, I gotta see her, Ted. I'm so in love. Yes, absolutely.
And then me calculating, like, how hard of a throat punch could I throw right now?
Let's see. He's about that far away, and he's on my left
Suddenly,
side.
all like the math things start flying in my head. And I'm just,
all the equations stuff.
oh man.
My next note, Roland is quite smart and dumb here, recognizing that they will be caught, but not caring and going on anyways, regardless of the risks. It's just,
Yeah.
it's so stupid, but also makes perfect sense. Like you just said,
Yeah.
he's young,
Yeah.
he's in love, He
Yeah.
just got his rocks off for the first time. Not first time.
Yeah, not first time.
First
but
time with her.
First time it meant something.
First few times with her.
Yeah.
Yeah, and everything. This would be like the quintessential, the difference between having sex and making love kind of thing
Yeah.
and everything. But still,
Didn't it say the prostitute wouldn't kiss him?
No.
So probably the first time he was kissing in the middle of it.
kiss someone that's not family, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like, So I get it, but at the same time, god damn, is he being dumb?
Yeah.
And
my note is it's negligent, and negligence is far worse than ignorance because with negligence you know better.
Exactly.
Like I think there's a difference there, and you can't, especially in a life and death situation like this. Ignorance is not something you can excuse.
Yes.
But it's like at least if you did a mistake out of ignorance, great, it was out of ignorance. Like now you could judge whether the person should have been ignorant, but like full on negligence, like that's bad.
Absolutely.
That's bad.
And that's the thing is like I get that, and there's been times at work where it's like, okay, if you do this, that's fine. Just tell us that you did it.
Yeah.
You did it wrong.
Yeah.
It's far worse that you figured out that you did something wrong and you try to cover it up.
Yeah.
That's so much worse
Yeah.
than just making a mistake.
Yep. Call
You
that
know?
the Nixon policy.
That's yes.
Cover up is worse than the crime. A few times in this section, we have been reminded of the coffin hunters knowing more than we would want them to. King is not letting that slip our minds.
Constant reminder.
I just want to point. It's kind of like our ticking clock, which we haven't seen in this episode yet, but I will say that that's coming.
Spoiler alert.
So we got ticking clocks a lot in this story, and
Yeah.
and so far now, since Roland saw DePape coming back, we've had three or four mentions of the fact that like
They know more than before. They know a lot about us. This is the update of the Castles game.
Yeah.
Those are the three that I can
Yeah.
remember from this episode alone.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's just one of those interesting things from a perspective of King's doing that for a reason. So
Yeah.
he's not just padding the stats for the word count here. So
Absolutely.
worth watching.
So Roland tells her to watch for Jonas and the other two. She says she will and asks for another kiss. He kisses her gladly and would have just gladly pulled her off for a fourth go-round, but it was time to start being careful. Finally. He says, fare you well, I love you, and stops himself and smiles, and he says, I love thee. She says, and I, thee, Roland. What heart I have is yours. She had a great heart, he thinks, as she slipped through the willows, and already he felt it as a burden on his own heart. He waited until she must be well away from him, and then went to rush her and rode off in the opposite direction, knowing that a new and dangerous phase of the game had begun.
And I just want to point out, it's not on one of my notes, but Roland, that's not her heart you're looking at.
My eyes are up here, sir.
You don't have x-ray vision. You're not looking at her heart right now.
At the approximate location of her heart, if I was able to see into her chest. Oh, it's her chest? What?
Oh, I didn't mean to do that. Yeah, right, kid.
It goes to the whole thing of like, I was just looking at her heart. It's like, yeah,
Yeah.
sure you were. That's the same as like, I opened the door because I'm a gentleman. I didn't want to watch her walk past and look at her ass, I've had people talk to me about that. I hate that when guys hold the door for me. It just means they can look at my ass. I'm like, you're not wrong. I mean, I get it.
Now, the question comes in, is that why the politeness was created?
Of course it was. Men back there were dogs. Back then were dogs.
Yeah, we ceased being dogs at some point. but
No.
Back then they certainly were. Right?
No, we never stopped being dogs, sir. We're mad. Come
I
on.
know, I'm being facetious.
My note here, man, I like both of them. I really like them as a couple too, but I get a bad feeling about that last line from King where it says, knowing that a new and dangerous phase of the game had begun. Also, I just want to point out another one that I pointed out earlier, that when they first joined together, King said that they were doomed.
Yeah.
And now we have a new and dangerous phase of the game beginning. It's just like, man, if you actually pay attention, shit's about to go down.
Yeah, shit's ramping up for sure.
Yeah.
But we have felt dread about it virtually from the start. Too many hints dating back to book one.
Mm-hmm.
But even if there was not a hint before this flashback, this is all setting up to be very troubling.
Yeah.
Like, this isn't.
It's a whole nother thing to be told about the bomb. It's a whole nother thing to see that the bomb is under 5 seconds.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's what's happening here. It's like,
Yeah.
maybe not 5 seconds. 5 seconds might be a little saying that there's
Unless
something's going to happen in the next subchapter. That's not
Yeah.
what I'm saying here.
Yeah.
Maybe all of a sudden the bomb went from 30 minutes down to 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. Like you cut the wire and instead of stopping the timer, it zzz,
Yeah.
or there's a short or something like that. So it's just like things are ramping up.
Yeah. My last note here, if nothing else, I really like seeing Roland not just as a human, but experiencing emotion like love and desire. Even when he was banging Allie, it just felt like it was a matter of fact and like no difference in taking a shit. Certainly there was no passion or love in it. It just felt like it's a bodily function. Like that's the way it felt in book 1 with Allie. And you mentioned Allie earlier, and I'm like, I knew I had a note about her. I couldn't remember where.
It was right here.
And it's here. It's like, because this is different. This is entirely different than what we've seen with Roland before. So very, very cool to see.
Yeah.
So let's go over to subchapter 14. Last subchapter of this episode, as well as the entire full-on chapter 9 and part 2. So pretty cool. Not long after Roland and Susan parted, Cordelia stepped out of Hambree's Mercantile with a box of groceries and a troubled mind. Troubled because of Susan, of course. Always Susan. Worrying that she would do something stupid before the reap. I hear you panting over there in anger. You're blowing air through your nose.
I hate her.
These thoughts were snatched out of her mind just as Hans snatched the box of groceries from her arms. It was Jonas. He buttered her up, and she was receptive. He asked to help her at least as far as he was going. She thanked him and accepted. She looked around to see who was observing them, and there was a satisfying number of onlookers. Again, just this woman, man. He asked if he could call her by her first name, and that since Mayor's dinner, he felt that he knew her. She said that is fine. He asked her to call him Eldred, but she said Mr. Jonas would do a little bit longer with a flirty smile. Her heart beat faster, and she thought that maybe Susan was not the only silly goose in the family. He agreed and asked about Susan. Cordelia said, fine, but a bit of a trial at times. And he said, was there ever a girl of 16 who wasn't? So there's your future here.
Oh, God.
Cordelia agreed, probably not. He mentions the larger burden for Susan this fall. Also, let me just pause real quick to say that the voice of reason's coming from Eldred Jonas.
What the fuck?
What world do we live in here?
What's going on here, King?
So there's a large burden for Susan this fall, and she doesn't realize it. Cord answers with a look and nothing more. He told her to give Susan his best and that she would, but she thought that she wouldn't because Susan was unfairly disliked, the mayor's regulators. She looked at the badge on his shirt and mentioned he had taken on more responsibility in the town, and he said yes to help Sheriff Avery as one of his deputies fell out of a boat and broke his leg. She laughed merrily and thought how it felt the whole town was watching, and that was not an unpleasant thought for her. They stopped at the corner, and he said that this is as far as he can help, but he asked if he would like if she would like a hand the rest of the way to her house, and she said no, and thanked him. He tipped her a salute and walked toward the sheriff's office.
Okay, I didn't have a note for this, but I just realized. So they got deputized because a sheriff's deputy fell out of a boat and broke his leg.
Yeah, at least he has. We haven't seen anything on the other two yet.
That's true.
Could very well just be Jonas.
Is that what really happened, or did they break this motherfucker's leg so they could get in? Did he fall out of a boat and they just took a crowbar to his leg or some shit?
Nancy Kerrigan.
Yeah, this Nancy Kerrigan his ass?
One thing I will say is after the Traveler's Rest, getting some more legitimacy in the town might behoove them.
Right,
so.
But doesn't that seem exactly like something that these three would do?
That's what I'm saying. That goes to your point is that after that whole nonsense, it's kind of like we gotta become law so that they can't disrespect us like that again. It's like the Tombstone thing, right? Like the Cowboys eventually get deputized from there's the sheriff and the marshal, and like Wyatt and all them are deputized by one, and the Cowboys are deputized by the other. So it's kind of a joke because they're all fucking criminals fighting each other, but they both have badges of different kinds.
Right.
Kind of feels like the same thing though, but it's like now that puts the boys at less of an advantage
because they don't have badges.
Now they've got the coffin hunters have a legitimacy that the boys don't. So
the boys have their ties to Gilead.
And that's it.
But that's very far away. This is town law.
Yeah, and Roland at least suspects that this town is not
entirely on the up and up.
Well, they're not loyal to Gilead and the affiliation.
Maybe not 100% loyal kind of thing. There's a bunch of people who may not be, if not all.
Yeah, if not all, exactly.
Kind of thing.
So we saw Jonas tell his men this strategy of smoozing up to a desperate woman at the dinner, and then we saw him engaging with Cord a bit, but this is probably a much bigger play at that strategy, so we kind of know what's happening here.
Mm-hmm.
Her wanting people to see is just so her.
Dude,
when I'm reading this, I'm thinking of you. I'm like, Peter's like fuming right now. Like,
dude, not only that, okay, I actually am expanding on your note here. not only looking to see that people are seeing her with Jonas, but she actually specifically calls out people by name. Oh, that person, so-and-so, saw me with him.
Yeah.
And she has a shocked of look on her face. That just tells you how big of a narcissist she is.
Yeah.
There's one thing to be like, dude, did anyone see me do that cool thing?
Yeah.
Anyone see that? Oh, he saw that. You know, that kind of thing. No, it's Tad saw me do that. Tad sees me with the prettiest girl in school. Yeah, that's right, Tad. Suck it. You know.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, what a narcissist.
Yeah. Yeah, indeed.
Ugh.
You don't know how much you dominate my mind when I run into some of these characters. So I think of you. Like, I remember Midnight Mass. I was like, I can't wait for Peter to watch this. And like, this lady is 100% Carmody, man.
Yeah, Mrs. Carmody right there.
Mrs. Carmody 2.0. So
Yep.
it's just, and I know you get so worked up with this stuff.
I
too.
do. I do.
It's great.
I wear my heart on my sleeve kind of thing, and that goes for frustration as well as like love and stuff.
So we can obviously see his ulterior motive in all of this, and we know enough about her to know that he chose wisely for his target.
Yeah.
So he is deputized now. That could complicate things. We already kind of talked about that.
Yeah, we talked about that, yeah.
So she walked home, and the box felt like a burden as coming out of the store, but now it felt like nothing for a bit, but it grew heavier as she sweatily approached the house. She saw Susan coming in and called her over to help. Susan came, and 10 minutes earlier, she would not have noticed anything amiss due to Jonas and the being kind of gaga with, lovey-dovey shit.
Yeah.
But the son had beaten the romance out of her mind. She didn't like something about the girl's appearance. Her temper had changed, and she had left in a half-hysterical confusion, and now she was pleasantly calm. That was the Susan of old, but not this year's moaning, moody breast beater. So that's a fun way to describe your niece. But I will give her at least a little credit, because we all kind of know what teenagers are, even if it comes down to what we were as teenagers and what all teenagers universally are. So I can't fully, I'm not going to excuse Cordelia by any means, but let's admit, teenagers are...
Yeah, if on the annoyance meter, they're towards the top.
Yes, indeed. She could not put her finger on much else except her hair. She reached out for a braid which looked uncharacteristically sloppy. It could have been riding, but it seemed darker. And Susan jumped at the touch of her hair. What was that about? She told her hair was damp and asked if she had been swimming. Susan said no, she had dunked her head under the pump outside of Hookie's barn because it was hot. Something was off about the girl's eyes, but she couldn't say what. She thought it couldn't be anything big. Susan had been incapable of secrets bigger than a birthday present or a surprise party, which that's not a fun thing to add. That she's not good
great.
At
She's not great at keeping secrets, and she has a huge one?
That's not good.
Shit.
And even those, just for a day or two, Cord touched Susan's shirt and remarked that it was still dry. And she's good, man. Cordelia is not...
These pieces of shit always are, aren't they?
Because it's true. It's a logical thing where it's like if you put your head under a faucet, like
when you stand up.
Yeah, especially with long hair. Susan said that she was careful. Cord said that she flinched when she touched her hair, and Susan answered that Rhea touched her like that, and then asked if she could finally bring the groceries in and get her horse out of the heat. Cordelia told her not to be pert, and Susan told her not to be tiresome. That's a good one. Cord told her to apologize, and she did, but said it was hot. Cord excused her. When Susan had walked away, Cord frowned. Maybe her suspicion was born from flirting with Jonas, but the girl was at a dangerous age, and much depended on her behaving for the next 7 weeks. After that, she was Thorin's problem. Until then, she was Cordelia's, and she bared closer watching, which, dude, she's not been watching 100% close up to this point?
Oh,
Jesus
shit.
Christ. And then on top of that, what just happened with Roland, and then basically saying, like, we've got to continue seeing each other.
Yeah, we have to.
To now turn that on to where it's like, oh, Cordelia's now going to be watching closer? Yeah. Like, I'm starting to sweat a little bit. About such things as a girl's virginity, it was best to be vigilant.
Yep.
So that is the end of the subchapter, the chapter, and the section, which, what are they called? Parts. So my notes here, of course, Cord sees her coming back, and of course she clocks the change in Susan's demeanor. But to be fair, it's a pretty radical shift, probably obvious enough for a man to notice.
Yeah.
Because we'll admit as men, sometimes we're not the most observant. But going from half hysterical that she ran out to kind of being serene, like, I think all of us would be like, what's going on there?
What happened?
Seeing her thoughts, I would like to blame Cord for being a bitch. Again, let's be honest, teenagers are kind of the worst.
Like, I get it that teenagers are the worst, but one thing I hate that adults do to teenagers, something that Cord does right here, she insults Susan first. Susan rises and snaps back, but suddenly Susan has to apologize.
Yeah.
I hate that. You have to respect me. I'm your elder, but I get to disrespect you.
Yeah.
And how dare you show me disrespect, you little shit? Like, I fucking hate that. I hated that when I was a kid.
Yeah.
The whole, I used to use that line on people. I think I used it on a teacher once. I was so pissed at him that he was just treating everyone like shit. And I said something and he got mad at me.
Yeah.
And he's like, you need to show me respect. I'm a teacher. And I go, you'll get respect when you fucking earn it.
Yeah.
Not in those words, of course. I was a kid.
And
but
that's what I've always said is respect is never given, it's earned. Like,
yeah,
that's just
like the whole
it
respect
to
your
me.
elders thing is one thing,
no.
but like
I
there's a difference between respect and being courteous and being polite.
Yeah, being polite.
Like
but,
if someone, she needs help across the street. It's an old lady. She needs help across the street and her groceries carried.
yeah.
That's being polite
Yeah.
and respectful and everything. But not doing it, not doing something or defending yourself is not disrespectful. I hate that.
Yeah.
I hate that aspect of some adults.
Yeah, indeed.
Cordelia is one of them.
Let's see. Susan is doing good with excuses. She's
Off to a hot start.
She's holding off. And then 7 weeks, more ticking clocks for this story. That's my last note. 7 weeks. So again, I think there was one other time in the last episode that it showed us it from the reverse, where it's like this many weeks until reap.
Yeah.
This is the same thing. 7 weeks. Like, we're not just saying like from that inspection where it's like, oh, it's 4 months or whatever, and then we were trying to like calculate it. Suddenly King's flipped where now he's telling us
now it's become a countdown. It's not like it's 4 months until Christmas. It's like, wait.
Yeah,
no, we're counting down now?
Yeah, it's T-minus 7 weeks. Like, whoa.
Oh,
Shit.
ruh-roh.
Yeah, indeed. But that'll do it. I don't know if there's any real spoiler notes to discuss in this one, but yeah, so that is it. Let's go ahead and hit the outro stuff.
Right at time. Look at that.
Yeah, pretty much right on time. So let's first of all, if you want to subscribe to us on any podcasting service of your choice, you can find us on Spotify, Amazon Music, all these kind of places that you stream music nowadays. You can also find us on YouTube over here at youtube.com/darktowerpalaver. If you're over here, if you could like, subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, that would be appreciated. You could join us in the live streams, as a few people did, Bill and Baraki. I know that we had some bigger numbers earlier, so I think some people are just listening as well. That's totally a thing. If you want to just watch episodes in the future, you could always do that as well. You can find the show notes at darktowerpalaver.com, as well as a hub for all things Dark Tower Palaver. And if you want to support the show, you can do that at patreon.com/darktowerpalaver. We will be doing, of course, a hangout for October. Spooky season is upon us.
Are we going to do my idea?
I don't know.
Still to decide?
Yeah, I don't remember what the idea was, so I'll have to say I don't know.
Okay.
But then if you want to contact us as well, Peter can let you know the ways to do that.
You can email us at show@darktowerpalaver.com. You can also follow us on our social media. We got Twitter. It's @DarkTowerPod. That's @DarkTowerPod. And then we got Blue Sky. It's @darktowerpalaver.bsky.social. And then Facebook.com/DarkTowerPalaver is us on Facebook. And then Instagram is Dark Tower Palaver, all one word, no spaces. And get your official Dark Tower Palaver merchandise, including the hashtag Tad is terrible official logo, the real general main #1 logo. It's tpublic.com/user/DarkTowerPalaver.
Lies. Deception.
You can say it all you want, but it's true.
But we'll sign off. And again, happy birthday to Cy King.
And happy birthday to you a couple days ago, sir.
Yeah, I guess that's true, but Stephen King's the important one, and it's his birthday today. So
it is.
Happy 77th to the creator of it all, and we all love him.
Love
he's
you,
great.
Steven.
Uncle Stevie.
Uncle Stevie.
But yeah, and then we'll be back in a fortnight for our next roundtable. Back, like I said, into spooky season. And yeah, until then, we'll sign off as we always do by saying long days and pleasant nights.
Long days and pleasant nights, folks.
Oi. All right, everyone in the chat, thank y'all for joining. Thanks, Baraki and Bill. I don't think Bill stuck around because he hasn't read this book yet. I certainly hope he didn't stick around too much longer, but definitely cool to hear some kind words. And yeah, we will see y'all in a couple weeks if you're a Dark Tower exclusive. If not, we'll see you for Geekery Abides momentarily. All right, see you guys.
Bye, everyone.